going to ask the director to do a roll call, please.
Trustee Buckland. Trustee Cartner.
Present.
Trustee Garrow.
Present.
Trustee McPherson. Trustee McAllister.
Present.
Second Vice McDonald.
Present.
First Vice McMillan.
Present.
Trustee McCray.
Present.
Chair Petersbaum changing. Trustee Richards.
Present.
Trustee Swan.
Present.
And Student Trustee Sidney Collard regret.
Thank you very much. Before we get into the agenda, it's nice to see everyone that could make it tonight. I certainly understand those that are on the phone and why you're not here. The other thing that's nice to see is you look around the table, you see a wave of pink. And everyone is wearing pink tonight as a reminder of the annual anti-bullying campaign that we have. So if anyone's watching and they're wondering why everyone is dressed in pink, well, you now know. Okay, I need a motion. I need a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board approve the consent agenda items 2.02, 2.03, February 27th, 2003. Moved by Trustee McAllister, seconded by Trustee Cartner. And I'll ask you to vote. That's approved. Do we have any conflict of interest? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Need a motion to move into the committee of the whole. Moved by Trustee Cartner, seconded by Trustee McAllister. We're going to be calling on you two a lot tonight. Those, let's cast our votes, please. Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to our first action, or actually discussion item, and I'm going to ask the director if you mind introducing the team.
Sure. The fact is, item 4.01, the Communication Relationship Management Department update. Last year we made a significant move in the organization to really take a look at how we were receiving and taking messages in and how we were projecting ourselves in the community. We have done a great deal of soul searching and reflection, and with that became a new department called the Communications Relationship Management Department. And with that came a whole new look, particularly at the social media. Some 5 years ago, we had a comprehensive audit that said our communications department was working at a very high level, and we had a third-party group for the National Association of School Boards come and work with us on that. But the fact is, the world is changing so quickly now, something that we barely even knew, Facebook, and other issues like Twitter, and other social media tools told us that we were not up to speed. It was begun by our board challenging our department to become more efficient, faster paced, and so forth, and to really recognize there may be a different way to communicate. We have begun this journey that you're going to see a draft of a plan from them on where we'll be going in the next 3 years. Now this time I'll turn it over to the manager of Director of Communications, Terry Simser, to introduce his colleagues. And I know that with the modern technologies, Cindy Peters. Cindy, are you online?
She may still be driving.
She could be driving in this mess, yes. Cindy Peters, who I sent home because she's quite a drive to Dundas, is also a member of the team, and we were hoping for her to be there in time to make a contribution, but she's already made her contribution. So I'll turn this over to you, Terry, and tell us what you're doing and what you're up to.
Thank you, Director, and good evening, everyone. The members of the department, Cindy Peters, just mentioned by the Director, was hoping to use telephone technology, of course, to be part of this meeting. That may still occur. We'll see how that goes. But she did get away a little later to try to make that drive home, given the weather. Also, Allison Grange and Mark Calder will be presenting portions of this report as well. I'll mention to you, too, that one of the, this of course report is in response to trustees' request for such from last fall. And you'll see on the screen, this is the map, or sorry, the map, the flag that the department has designed to represent the mission, vision, and values of the department. You'll notice that there are flags beneath the large flag, and those other smaller flags in the bottom are the various other departments in the administration building, and they are there symbolically to demonstrate that we support all of the departments with their communication needs. On this slide, you'll see this is it depicts the 5 themes that the CRM department, the Communications and Relationship Management Department, is focusing on for the next 3 years. And we are going to present this in such a way that, so we're not having different turns at the microphone. I'll finish my comments, turn it on over to Allison Grange, and then Mark Calder, and then Cindy Peters if she may join us, and then I'll wrap it up. So I'm starting with the relationship management on the left side of the slide, media in particular. One of our plans is to meet with editors of newspapers and other media outlets, and the idea there is to proactively manage issues. And an example would be the Ontario Labor Relations Board issue that we're dealing with currently. We've had some very good media relations opportunities with the Globe and Mail and the Toronto Star, mainly through the Chair, Greg Petersma, being at the OLRB hearing in Toronto. And so they are eagerly awaiting the OLRB decision. We get calls from them on virtually a daily basis. And through that, too, Greg has really become the chair of a school board in Ontario that the media turns to for an update on what is going on from our perspective and the perspective of other boards in the province. We're also in meeting with editors to design that. We are inviting the local trustee and the chair of the board to join us for those meetings with editors as they so wish. And it will be an opportunity then, of course, to allow trustees to better know the editors of publications in their area. The meetings will allow us to clarify our goals while better understanding their expectations. Next, we have trustees listed for our internal relationship group. And our goal there is to further support trustees and administrative staff to use new communication tools such as social media. And again, as trustees so wish, it'll be up to the trustee how involved with social media they wish to be. And by improving communication strategies, trustees will, of course, be able to build better relationships with the constituents in their wards. From the internal board staff standpoint, our focus here is working with staff to develop communication plans for various projects. That's an ongoing opportunity for us that we apply our skills to that area on a regular basis. Also applicable to both trustees and staff is the creation of our Communications Advisory Cabinet. That cabinet has met twice. The second meeting was this afternoon. Trustee Karkner is the trustee representative on the Communications Cabinet. And we also have the other employee groups represented. Under the crisis management banner for our department, we are developing a crisis communications protocol. It will feature a communication tree that will identify who needs to know what and when. And of course, trustees will be an integral part of that communication tree to ensure that trustees are informed of crisis situations as early as possible, and of course, kept abreast of developments regarding that particular crisis. The protocol will also be a roadmap for every board employee that has responsibilities to fulfill in a crisis situation. Eventually, we'll be including emergency services as well to round out to ensure that we have full communication with our communities. For principals and vice principals, we'll be developing a separate crisis communication plan for them. It will be very similar to the one we're doing for the department, but it will be certainly designed more in focus with what principals' needs are in the event of a crisis. And of course, our department has a rich history of supporting principals in schools when a crisis occurs, such as the death of a student. An example, recently there was a fire at Centennial 67 Public School. Upon learning of that fire, we confirmed details with Superintendent David Coombs, and we were quickly able to issue a news release to the media, also using our social media platforms to get the message out that the students were safe. And then shortly afterward, it was decided to have parents pick up their children, so we posted that message to Facebook to ensure that parents were informed of that on a very quick basis. Under building capacity, on the right side of the slide, the department staff, our focus is to ensure that all PD supports and enhances the professional communications needs of our school board. As well, our training is designed to ensure that CRM staff remains on the leading edge of professional communications delivery.
Peter.
I can tell you that last fall we had
What are you doing?
We had a conference we attended last fall.
Okay, boy, you're.
You'll just stop for a second. Peter?
Yeah.
Trustee Garrell?
He may want to use mute.
Yes, you might want to mute what you're doing there, Trustee Garrell, please. Can you hear me? That's it, thank you. Sorry about that.
That's quite all right. The staff of the CRM department attended the case conference last fall in Niagara Falls, and one of the things we did learn very quickly is that we are very leading edge when it comes to social media, and in fact, we have members in our department who could be actually doing the training in a workshop as opposed to attending a workshop. I'll now gladly hand it over to Allison Grange.
Okay, I'll be speaking to 3 items in the promotions and branding section in the middle. The first one will be UCTV. UCTV is a very exciting initiative that we've been working on since October. UCTV is a live online video channel that publicly broadcasts student-focused events and initiatives that take place all throughout the board. Although our department has worked on many video projects over the last 4 years, UCTV allows us to do a lot more. With UCTV broadcasts, we have the ability to share major school events in real time with anyone in the world. If a student has a grandparent who lives in a nursing home who cannot attend the event, they could watch the event online in live. Or if a student has a friend or family member in a different country, they have the ability to watch the event live online too. So I'll just give you a brief timeline of this project. In November, we had our first committee meeting. Now, this committee was comprised of teachers, principals, vice principals, students, and together we discussed the vision for UCTV and what they would like to see UCTV look like within their schools. So they came up with ideas such as we could stream major sports tournaments, school plays, initiatives that would affect more than one school, student council elections, and many more. As well as in November, we had the Ward 4 School Council Chair meeting hosted by John McAllister. This meeting offered 2 components, a web-based video component and a teleconference component. The web-based video took place during the first half of the meeting and allowed school council members as well as the general public to watch live presentations by UCDSB staff and students. School council members as well as the general public viewed the live presentations on Ustream. So we have a channel on a service called Ustream, while the second component of the meeting was a teleconference which occurred immediately after the live presentations. This event gave people the opportunity to learn and participate in this meeting without physically attending, and I heard some great feedback from it. So I just wanted to show quickly a clip of that meeting. So you can get a sense of what it looked like.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John McAllister, and I'm trustee for the Upper Canada District School Board in Ward 4. Welcome to the first live Ustreaming of Upper Canada TV. My goal is to have a conversation with the school councils in Ward 4, and I thought it best to frame the conversation around some key issues of immediate concern to parents and students. And that is mainly students' wellness, success, and achievement. I'm accompanied this evening by Valerie Allen on my left. Valerie is the Superintendent of Education. And on my immediate left is Christy Rietsma. Christy is Vice Principal at South Grenville District High School. And to my right is Chris Boston, Principal at the Gananoque Intermediate Secondary School.
Okay, so that was just a brief look at what this looked like. And that is available still on Ustream for viewing. Let me open this back up. In December, the Upper Canada Sports League Intermediate Students Volleyball Tournament took place at North Grenville District High School, and we live streamed the finals of this event for 2 days. The winning team was from Montague, and before the finals, the principal there, Charles Hayfron Benjamin, invited all of the students to the gymnasium to watch UCTV. They were able to experience the excitement of the win in real time from their own school. As well as in December, we started the Trustee Good News Stories. Those are currently stored on our Vimeo site, and we're hoping to have them live streaming shortly as well. In January, we developed an animation to play at the beginning of all of the broadcasts, and actually I'll show you those too. These are animations that give our channel an identity. So I'll just show you. We've got one that's kid-like. So that's the first one. This is the second. So it gives our channel a real television look. Okay. As well, in January, we also started the student logo contest, which is running until March 1st. This is to have students come up with a logo design that we can then create and make into an animation. February, so as of tomorrow, Friday, Monday, and Tuesday, we will be live streaming the finals of the UC Cup basketball tournaments and volleyball tournaments. So this is another big event for us for UCTV, and it will allow anyone who wants to see the tournaments, they don't have to actually go. They can watch it online. So some goals for this tool in the future. We would love to have an animated logo for every single secondary school, every single school. The ability to stream live from all secondary schools and potentially all schools. We'd like to know more about student involvement and how they can actually get involved in streaming the shows live. We're coming up with further show ideas, and we're looking at different technology needs for the future. The next point is video. As previously mentioned, video has been a large part of our communication strategy for at least 4 years. Currently, there are 166 videos on the board's Vimeo account and 37 photos on the board's YouTube account. Not all videos were produced in-house, but many of them were. A video strategy protocol and video request template will be developed by mid-March. The 2-year strategy will help us plan our video campaigns based on goals of the department and the board. For example, we will be focusing a lot on kindergarten registration and school registration. The protocol and video request template will be developed and implemented so that we can produce videos that align with the board's goals. As with social media, which I will also talk about in a moment, we are always researching and learning about video production so that we can stay as current as possible in the use of the appropriate tools. Social media. I'm going to be speaking briefly about this, but Cindy will elaborate on it later on. Our UCDSB social media strategy will be developed by April 2013. The purpose of this strategy is to outline our department's objectives for the use of social media for school and board promotions. It will outline why are we using it, why is social media such an important component of our overall communication strategy for the board. Within it, we will highlight the objectives, the management, tools, response protocol, evaluation and metrics, standards, guidelines, terms of use. We're also building a database of training materials for staff, which will include written instructions, videos, quick tips for office administrators, as well as principals and vice principals. Now I will turn it over to Mark Calder.
Good evening. I'll be talking to you tonight about promotions and branding. The first thing I'd like to talk about is the kindergarten advertising campaign. The department's taken a strategic approach to kindergarten advertising with newspaper ads. We've reduced the number from 33 to 15, and we're making a gradual move to an online strategy targeting the 20 to 34 age group, the parents that are registering in our boards. And another advantage of online is that we can measure its effects. Radio campaigns, we're putting more money into radio. Recently, with the advertising campaign in January, we demonstrated as a department how nimble we could be. We changed the campaign once it was announced that the board was going to full-time kindergarten at all of our sites. We received news on the change on January 23rd. We changed our script on the 24th, had voiceovers booked by the 25th, and we were in the studio on the 29th. And we actually used a child from Commonwealth Public School to help us out with that. So we're using the student voice. We're also running innovative contests on Facebook, such as our recent holiday video contest. And we're advertising on Facebook and other online services. One of the things that we do have to do is get more data on the effectiveness of this, and we are planning a survey with Sarah Crawford on that. Now, after doing all this, we have generated savings of about $35,000 compared to last year. We're also working on updating our logos for our schools. We found that many of our schools, they don't have high-resolution logos that are necessary for good advertising campaigns. So we're planning a project where we're going to hire a graphic artist to revise, create logos in black and white and color formats, in different formats, JPEG, EPS, and the kind that companies need to advertise. And we're going to start by reviewing what's in the schools now. We're going to have a request for proposals by July and hope to have the full redesign completed by September 2014. The last thing I want to talk to you about tonight is media releases. I think we do a good job at that now. But we're working to improve our releases, and one of the things that we're doing is ensuring that we have online contacts, URLs, so that reporters can quickly, easily get more information that they need. And I'm not sure, is Cindy on the line yet?
I am.
Hey, well done, Cindy.
I'm going to pass it on to Cindy now. Thank you.
Okay, the first part I'm going to talk about relationship management is accessibility. We've been researching other boards for examples to draw from. We have a deadline to meet for our website. Peel is a good example. They're fully accessible now, so they're sharing some information. And I'm working with the IT project team on that regarding the development of the new website. Mark and I completed training on creating accessible documents, and templates will need to be created for all documents that go on the web and home to parents so that they are accessible. We need to create a communications plan for implementation of this, as well as a training plan for all staff, because they will need to know how to use the templates when they're creating the documents. For schools and communities, we have expanded the key communicators and community ambassadors network, and we have created the connected newsletter. We have a banner that Mark worked on with the graphic designer, and that's going out with our fast facts being sent weekly. And we are going to begin including biographies of board staff in the connected probably once a month, just to let people know who the staff are. The connected messages are now being posted on some school websites and will be soon posted on the board site as well. We've been doing a lot of monitoring of social media, and by paying attention to what's being said, we have been able to respond quickly to any concerns, questions, inaccuracies, and to direct any extra concerns where they need to go. So if it's appropriate, to the superintendent, to human resources, etc. And we've been getting a lot of good feedback from parents and schools regarding the use of social media and the increase. Through social media, we are ensuring accurate, timely communication to staff, parents, and community, and that's shown in the higher engagement of all the stakeholders. We are planning to implement a professional learning community program with office administrators, and we will begin with teaching more social media and website training. So we're working now, meeting with the families of schools to get that started. And we are also working with Sarah on the connection to service excellence. One of the examples of our community successes was the day that we held for the Akwesasne Mohawk Board of Education people. It went off very well and showcased our Cornwall area schools quite well. For promotions and branding, part of my role will be to audit all of the school and board websites. So I have drafted a template. I've just started that based on what good schools look like, and I'll be starting the audits in May. This will be a continual process ongoing throughout the years. We start with the board sites because they will be audited as well. And we're also looking for training opportunities for office administrators and principals and vice principals on how to use the website better. Right now, we only have about 55% of our schools that are using the board-based website, and that's only partial use, and there's very few that are being used very well. We have about 15% that are now using other web templates and programs as they are easier to use than our board site. So that's something we need to get away from. We've seen on our board site an increase of approximately 300 views per day since September, as it's becoming more current, relevant information there. and over half of the visitors have come to the site through Google, so it's not just board staff searching it. The website audits will be included in the high performance schools audits, and this will reinforce with the school admin and office staff the importance of the website as part of their whole communication strategy. We do encourage personalizations of the sites. We do want the board brand to be discernible everywhere through all their means of communication, but we want the sites to be personalized. And I recommend, if you have a chance, to go look at Gananoque School's site. Chris Boston has done some amazing work on that, and the hits on that by the public have tripled since September. Our social media, we have had an increase from 50% of our schools being active on social media in September up to 83% currently. And on our board site, we've had a consistent growth in our fans and followers since September. We've doubled up to almost 2,400 people that now like our page. The sharing of board stories on our board Facebook page has gone from 260 a day to over 1,200 a day, and the reach of those stories has increased from 2,000 to over 15,000. Part of that is when the buses are canceled. That's a big thing that increases our shares and our reach. So our vision will be that all of our schools will be effectively using both their websites and social media as an integral part of their communications plan, along with the traditional methods of newsletters, etc. And we are focused on aligning the system to the school through training and professional development. My next piece is the budget. We've changed the ordering processes to use purchase orders now for all of our advertising campaigns. So we're using new methods to measure the financial impact of what we do. We're monitoring the budget regularly, all the expenditures, and this keeps us accountable and accurate and within budget. We've reduced and eliminated a number of expenses this year so far, and now at the half point of the year, we have over 50% of our budget remaining, and our overall expenditures are $47,000 less than they were last year at the same point. My last piece is building capacity, the training of board staff. We now have over 80% of our schools who have at least one person trained to manage social media sites. The professional learning community's proposal has been very well received so far by the principals and office staff that we've spoken with. And I'll be sending out a survey hopefully next month to gather suggestions as to what exactly the office staff would like to have in regards to training. The model will be half a day will be training specific to their family of schools, and the other half will be a day that they can network, work together on issues in their families of schools, best practices, that kind of thing. Initially, the training will be on social media and website communications with Allison and myself, and in the future it will go on to other needs based on each family's preferences. And I'm hoping to eventually identify a leader in each of these family of schools office groups who will be able to lead the PLCs in the future. Get them started. I can help with any training that they require to get in, but that they will lead the groups themselves. On our final piece, we have adapted the IT training manual on web authoring just to teach the basics, so it's not as overwhelming to the staff. They can edit, add, delete, that kind of thing, so it's a little more acceptable to them, a little easier for them to grasp. So that's all I have, so Terry will wrap up.
Thank you very much, Cindy. In closing, I want to emphasize that we have come a long way in the last 9 months. The department is more cohesive. As a team, we have a singular focus. We use 3 lenses for all of our work, those lenses being we are a high-performing board, we are fiscally responsible, we are a caring board. All means all. Our mission, vision, and values demonstrate we understand the needs of the board and how we can better serve students. In the department, service excellence is a key component of what we do every day. We are here to serve our students and board staff with all their communication needs. In regard to social media, we had Amber MacArthur visit us again last summer to support us. What we learned is that there was perhaps as much for Amber to learn from us as there was for us to learn from her. And we recognize that parents are going online to find out about our school board. That is why we're choosing a different methodology, to attract parents. In April, we will have highly respected communications professional Barry McLaughlin visit us to provide advice on how we can further improve our professional communication initiatives. We know we're on the right track, and we look forward to further demonstrating that to trustees. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I continue, I'm going to pass the meeting over to our chair, who has arrived and safely arrived. So thank you very much for being here, and it's all yours.
All right, and thank you, Jeff, for stepping in. And David, do you want to just summarize
First
the
of all,
end?
I'd like to thank the group and thank Terry Davies. We have together spent hundreds of hours together shaping the new communications relationship management department. But I don't want you to overlook something that's quite meaningful, and you could just call it a flag, but it really has the values which we're committed to. And as Terry explained very well, is we have the flags, and these are the mission statements of each of the departments that are aligned with the mission statement that the Board of Trustees has passed. Each of these mission statements talks about the service that that department has to deliver. We've created a mission, a vision, and shared values. You take a look that this was to sort of recognize the very colors, the coolness with the different things that are going on, the gray and the lighter blue, so forth. This is to recognize sort of modern, hip, and then you see the radar or sonar dish or whatever it is the wizard will talk about. The fact is, would you take a look here very closely in the mission, strategic and innovative communications for all. A vision, student-focused communications and relationship management for world-class schools. And our values are, we are strategic, committed to working as a team, filled with integrity, and use courage to act on issues. We are innovative and caring, always dedicated to accuracy and committed to having fun. Excuse me. That was the beginning of, and we spent a great deal of time on that to really focus the team. And what you see, it will be the next test as we move forward, will be actually that team leading through. I'd like to thank them for their commitment and their hard work. We have a lot more climbing involved in this journey, but the fact is we've come a long way, and through you, Chair Petersma, we'll turn this over to questions. And Cindy, you're still on the line? Good.
Okay.
I'm here.
All right. Just before we carry on, I'm just going to check and see who we have on the teleconference. So just be prepared. I'm going to call it out in alphabetical order again. Trustee Buckland.
Here.
Trustee Garrow.
Here.
Trustee McPherson.
Here.
Trustee McDonald.
Here.
Trustee McCrae.
Here.
Trustee Richards.
Here.
Trustee Swan.
Here.
Trustee Collard.
Oh, she's not.
No. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. And if you could, when you're not speaking, please place your line on mute.
My apologies.
Yeah, no problem. I'm just, for questions, because we have so many people online, I'm going to cycle through all of you and just ask. I'm going to start with the people in the room, and then I'll come to you. So I will go through the list alphabetically again. So if you have a question, that's how I'll get to you. So in the room, any comments or questions? Trustee McMillan?
Through you, Chair. It was a while ago, I believe, that Cindy and Allison spoke to the Parent Involvement Committee, and you did an excellent job, by the way. Great representation from the board. It was a concern at that particular meeting that various schools are at different levels of comfort when it comes to social media. Can you just very briefly tell us how you move into a school and help them move forward in their comfort zone?
Through you, Chair. I will answer this. I'm not sure if Cindy has anything more to add after, but currently what we do is we started doing training one-on-one, and so we'd go into a school either because they wanted to learn more or because they wanted to improve their social media presence, and we would show them different examples of great social media pages that other schools have taken on, and we show them what can be done with these social media tools. So a lot of times we kind of just do a bit of an intro and just show how great they can be for school communications. And then we usually we generally go through Facebook first, and we if someone's used it before, great. If not, no big deal. And we will go through and train everyone on how to use it. And we always let people know that we are there to support. So we're not going to just train and then that'll be it. We get questions probably daily through email or by phone from different school staff who are wondering about unique situations through their social media sites. And it's pretty gradual, but we just try to show all of the positives. There really are so many positives with social media. So even if people are uncomfortable, we really try to warm them up to all of the great things that can be done.
Just to follow up to that.
Yep, go ahead, Trustee
Just to
McMillan.
follow up, are you seeing those positive changes once they see how, I'm reluctant to use the word easy with the director at the table, but how you can actually use social media and it's not quite as difficult as they probably perceived initially?
Through you, Chair. So many times, we have actually many email examples of different people saying, I can't believe how easy this was. Thank you for coming out and just showing us and walking us through the steps. In most cases, most people say this is easier than we thought.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Trustee McAllister?
Thank you, Chair, through you, if I could. We issued you a challenge, Carrie and Allison and Mark and Cindy, some time ago. And I have to say that I'm very, very pleased with the presentation that I see and the plan. It's comprehensive. It demonstrates a good vision. What I really like about it is the measurable parts of it. I think you have listened. So, having said that, can I drop the other shoe?
Sure.
And it's not really a dropping, but I have a question for perhaps each of you, but maybe if I could begin with Cindy. With regard to the key communicators in the community and your connected document that you send out, how efficient do you find that to be? And in what way is there two-way communication between the community communicators as well as one-way?
Cindy?
Okay, I'm having a hard time. I missed the last part of the question. I'm having a hard time hearing.
Okay, with regard to the key community communicators, is there two-way communication with these people?
Through you, Chair, we have had some responses back from some of the key communicators as well as their community ambassadors. I've seen in my own community, one of my community ambassadors is the lady who runs the House of Lazarus, and she started sharing it on Facebook. She's sharing it now with our student minister who is printing it in our church bulletin. I've had some random people that have emailed to say that they've gotten this from so-and-so and they really appreciate hearing these little tidbits about the board. So it's not really a complete two-way for the connected part. We have started putting it up on the Facebook site, so I anticipate that there will be more comments and conversation once we start having it on the Facebook all the time.
Thanks, Cindy. I'm going to pass for now. I'll
Okay.
share the air time.
You want to, okay?
Thank you, Cindy, and that was well done. Trustee McAllister, one of the pieces that we knew that was important, there was a lot, when we did the audit of what was being said out there, people had inaccurate information about us. In fact, in some jurisdictions, they didn't know how large we were. They didn't know we ran 86,000 kilometers of buses a day. And it wasn't to impress them with the size, but to let them know that this is an organization that wears many hats and does a really good job, and that we balance our budget and do all those things, and it's a gigantic budget. What we want to do is get information out so people say, well, that was interesting. We're 86,000 kilometers, 564 buses. This is, and what we're getting, the feedback we're getting is, well, that was interesting as we go through. And we're just giving the facts about the organization, where the trustees come from, of that nature, to educate and push accurate information out. What we had asked Cindy to do that's been critical, because one of the points that you had made, John, and several of your colleagues, was that they were good at putting stuff out there, but do you pay attention and do you listen? And what we did was, and Cindy's assignment was to really monitor the chats that are going on. What are people talking about and how are they talking about us? Not to say you don't have the right to talk about us, but the fact that they were talking about us. So, and what Cindy does every day, and Cindy, I mean, I know what you do, but maybe more appropriate for you to explain it, how you monitor the different chats and the different blogs to find out what people are, how they're commenting about the board. And then the chair may want to comment about that information and how that's been used in a much better way for us, because I think it has served both Greg and I much better. Cindy, could I ask you to comment a bit about and how you sort of monitor the channels of communication and the different chats that are going on?
Through you, Chair. Part of what I do with the monitoring, I have a few different tools that I've been using. One is Google Alerts, which is a little bit delayed, but it gets a lot of stories from not just the big newspapers, but a lot of random little papers, little radio stations, that kind of thing. I have alerts set up on Twitter with a number of keywords, including things like UCDSB, the different union acronyms, labor, anything that's kind of a hot topic. I put in the keyword and have a search, so then I get alerts on a regular basis. On our Facebook site, there's a tool called Pages that gives us notifications, same kind of thing. Anything that's posted on our page, anybody comments, anybody adds, anything like that. Allison and Dave Coombs have that as well. So we've been able to respond very quickly to issues where somebody is being inappropriate, where somebody has a question that just needs to be answered now. And there's some other tools that are out there that fine-tune the monitoring to make it easier, so you're monitoring 24/7 without actually being online 24/7. So I'm looking at a few different tools that way to see which would be the best value. They range in cost from $50 a month to $1,000 a month, depending on what you want and how many channels you want to monitor. So I'm still researching to find out, there's so many out there, which one will be actually the best to monitor everything that we need to do. But right now it's just kind of alerts set up with keywords that I can change at any time.
And John, what's happened with that, we've been able to get feedback that people perhaps thought we weren't listening to now. And some of it is quite impressive. They say, have you thought of this? Or they've come back and we've got great feedback on decisions we've made. And we've got feedback saying that was a really dumb call. And what we've been able to do, especially now as we're getting better at listening, is discerning which is the best voices to listen to about our performances in the community. And so we're pushing accurate information out, and we're taking information in. And I know during the course of the last 2 months in dealing with media requests for information, and then to speak accurate, if you're talking to CBC or the Recorder and Times or whatever, we've been able to have much more up-to-date, up to just on Times type of information, so that we can actually share with the people who are watching this, whether it's a CBC interviewer or it's some very accurate information. And we also know in some cases where we thought we might be pumping out something that may be unpopular, that we've discovered in certain jurisdictions is very popular. So it's helped us, I think, to be more sensitive. And I think what Cindy has also said, I think we've become more timely in our responses.
Thank you.
Trustee Carkner, do you have anything at this time?
Yes, through you, Chair, I'd like to ask a little bit more about this media section. I believe Terry was talking about this, where you want you're going to get together with local editors. Do you have a list ready now as to who you will be contacting?
We have a full media list for the entire jurisdiction of our school board. The currency of it is something I would suggest. We often will send messages out or news releases, and we'll get a kickback because that particular reporter has moved on to another media outlet, who knows where. So there's a turnstile out there for some of the outlets that we deal with, a lot of turnover. So I would say to you, though, that our intention is to, number one, be sure our list is updated, but number two, we'll be contacting them directly to schedule the meeting opportunity. So, and in turn, when that happens as well, to contact the local trustee and the board chair to ask if they wish to participate as well.
Follow up, Chair?
Yep, go ahead.
Is there any chance that I personally would like to see that list as to who's involved in our community? Because I do have some discussions with the local press there, and I'm sure other trustees would appreciate the same, to make sure that key people that we've made relationship with are on your list.
Through you, Chair, absolutely. Absolutely, we would do that.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
You know, I can add in a little bit here if it's all right with you, Mr. Sims or Terry. Taking the time to develop relationships with the media has been very, very important, and I think, developing the confidence between both the reporters and myself, that when you talk about background, that it's background, when you're provide, like, that kind of relationship has proved to be very, very useful. And I think that you know, all we've ever wanted was accurate coverage, and I think that having that kind of relationship is really useful. So I think that the more that we can have those kinds of relationships with our media, the better off our public are, just by having better information. So I'm going to start with people online. Trustee Buckland, do you have any comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman, is the email a legitimate question?
Well, you ask the question, then we'll tell you.
Okay, well, am I the only one to complain about switching from the Canadian berry on Bell to the American apple on Celis?
All right. No, you're right. Your first inclination was right, Trustee Buckland. That's not germane. But certainly, we will provide you an opportunity to ask that question, okay? So,
thank you.
All right. Trustee Garrow.
Chair, I'm just wondering how I'm looking at this, and I'm just wondering how they connect with the communication from OSPA.
Communication from OSPA? Is
Yep.
there any connection, correlation? I understand that you are in contact with Jeff Sprang there on a regular basis, are you not?
Through you, Chair, that's correct. Jeff and I are in email communication primarily on definitely a weekly basis, and more recently, perhaps because of the OLRB issue, we've been in touch with each other more frequently than usual. It's more a case of being in communication with each other as required, and sometimes things just become a little hotter than usual, so more discussions are needed, etc. One of the things from a communication standpoint that OPSPA does very well is they are a broker of shared information that is sent to other OPSPA member boards. So, for example, you've got a board such as the Peel Board that has a large communications department team, a very, very strong focus on many different nationalities and cultures in that board. And so they have a number of interesting documents they produce from time to time on how they communicate with their parents and their communities. And so we are in receipt of a lot of those types of documents on a regular basis because of OPSPA. They broker the information. I would say to you, quite often, many of those documents would not be all that relevant to what we are doing, or we're already doing it very well. But the communication is certainly there, and we're always open to new ideas or suggestions that OPSPA offers. We also get requests from OPSPA. It's usually from another member board. Is canvassing other boards looking for information pertaining to a certain communications aspect in their department. So they'll go through Jeff, and he'll send it across the province, and we'll have an opportunity to work with colleagues in providing our best practices with them as well.
Just a follow-up.
Yeah, go ahead, Trustee Garrow.
I guess through you, Chair, maybe, Tim, if you get a chance, I'd maybe like to bring you over to Akwesasne to meet with our people on our radio station and our newspaper too, to connect with them.
Through you, Chair, welcome the opportunity, Trustee Garrow, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I could add a little bit to your OPSPA question, and perhaps David, Trustee McDonald would have something to add. The OPSPA has done a certain kind of communication fairly well. I would credit them with being very astute and on top of information coming out of the government. We get the fast reports once a week, which does a pretty good job of summarizing legislative changes and calendars. The part that's lagged is their take-up of social media, and I know that we had a conversation with them in August on one of the teleconferences, and they were taken to task by a couple of boards, including ours, for their for not being on social media, and they have gone out and hired somebody that's a little bit is quite more. Is considerably more adept at social media, so that's been a positive move. The rest of the communication strategy by OPSPA we can discuss it at a different time. That's more content, I guess. I'm thinking about. All right. Do you have anything to add, Trustee McDonald? You're up next, so you can, if you have any questions, or you want to make a comment on Peter's question, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a comment on that and a couple of questions. So just in relation to OPSPA and to follow up with what you've said, certainly there's a lot of information that does come out. OPSPA social media aspect has picked up a little bit. The social media was measured during the last public education symposium. We received a report at the last Board of Directors meeting with some of the statistics about the number of tweets that were done, retweets, the hashtags, the mentions, and then the actual possibilities or sites that people might have had interaction with tweets that were done. I would say they still haven't embraced a full understanding of what social media is. I mean, it's not just meant to be at a particular conference. It's a regular occurrence. So there is still some work to do there, but it's a work in progress. The questions I have, and the director, he spoke about it, but I had a bit of a difficult time in hearing him, I guess, just with some of the phone issues. You had mentioned the issue or the fact that the department has created a mission, vision, and values, and you basically, I think you highlighted that or provided some rationale as to why departments do have mission, vision, and values. And maybe, if you wouldn't mind, could you just repeat that for me, Director?
David, one of the things that we have, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
In the organization, we have each of the departments that is asked to take a look at their core responsibilities to the organization. For example, HR's is significantly different to finance. However, they do have to work together. The issues of IT are interesting, but the issues of maintenance of our buildings is an issue, and each of them have to look at their core issues and connect with the vision that our board, the Board of Trustees, has established for the organization, and the singular outstanding goal that we have that binds us all together. And then to talk about how our activities and our values-related activities and the work we're going to do, how are we going to stay focused on that? And so we spent several months grounding ourselves in getting out what we really have to do. And it began with the three lenses that Terry shared with you, because that's something that we wanted to make sure that no matter what happens, that the community gets it all the time. That A, this is a high-performing board. 2, we're physically responsible, that we look after the dollars and cents in a way that is very, very responsible. And the last one, that's probably the most important, is that we care for all the kids, and all means all. And so with that in mind, we took a look then at the values of what we're going to do. And one of the dysfunctions that we had to address was the fact that the team had not to come together as a team. The other thing we had that we nearly, although we wanted to push communications out there, one of the issues, as Trustee McAllister raised, we weren't too good at taking information in. And really, quite frankly, we never thought about that. We push, press releases out, we push a variety of things out, and we assume that we see that it's been received, it's been received. And so when Cindy joined the department, we began to look, and I know some cynical voices said we're just going to try and find the people who have something to say and get them. But that's not been the case at all. In fact, what we've been able to do is monitor the chats, monitor the blogs. Cindy has learned a very important skill set with keywords and so forth. And we've been able to monitor what people are saying about us, how they're talking about our decisions. Some very supportive, some not so supportive. Today, we may not have got a great deal, and Cindy will tell you there's a lot of traffic out there about our inability to deal with the snow traffic. But the fact is that this has given us now a great opportunity to listen, to understand, so that when we push information out, we're a little better at being sensitive of what's going on in the community. And I think that's made us better. But it began really looking at the why we do what we do within the communications department. And we spent a great deal of time in that. And as you see this draft work in front of you, it was a very important part that I forced the group to stay with until we had something that would serve the entire organization.
Thank you, Mr. Director. I guess my concern or caution comes from that. Let me back up a little bit. I think there's a valuable piece in having departments to have vision and think about moving forward and think about having a continuous improvement plan in place. The caution I guess I have is that if we develop, or if boards develop their own mission, vision, and values, they may lose sight of what the greater good of the board is at times, and you become those islands of excellence, functioning to their own mission, vision, but losing sight. So I guess the challenge moving forward is to ensure that those islands, if they do exist or if they have been created, that we have those bridges linking the islands. So it's not so much anything today. It's just let's make sure that as we move forward that we have that piece. I think you've got some people in place to assist you with that to ensure that we have alignment within our department. So as we move forward, we can make sure that we keep our eye on those types of things. My next, sorry, Mr. Chair, if I can, my next two pieces. You want in there, Mr. Director?
Yeah, thank you. And through the chair, David, I totally agree with you 100%. And if any of the trustees want a presentation of that, every single department has a different core commitment to the organization. And I absolutely agree with you 100%. If it were to become an island, and we've talked about this before, that potentially HR become an island of themselves and send out edicts. I'm not picking on Charlotte, but if they sort of thought that we're at the center of the universe and everyone serves us, all of a sudden the mission of the board is created for our community and our commitment to have the highest graduation rate in North America, it somehow becomes second to what the HR department is doing. I totally agree with you, and that's why we have to be vigilant, as you've said, to make sure everybody's aligned to the core mission of the organization, and that's to get the kids a world-class education. However, and I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to underscore this, every one of those departments has a unique function to some degree that has to be a part of getting us there. The communications department didn't have it. They were working very, very hard at pushing things out there, and when you guys said as a group of trustees, stop, and you didn't use this term, but are we getting the best out of that department? It's forced us to really take a look at what we're supposed to be doing to be connected to the purpose of this organization. And right now, I think they've worked hard to do that. But I do agree with you. I think if any one of those groups, and I think that's what you're saying, any one of those groups became its own little island, I think it would be something that we would have to deal with. Continue. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I
Yeah,
could I
go
continue?
ahead, Trustee McDonald.
Thanks. A number of points were made about some savings realized as a result of change in how communication department has reallocated their advertising dollars, those types of things. With those savings, then, has there been a reallocation of money to help with some of the things that we're trying to put forward, or I guess maybe what has happened to the funds if we've found those savings?
Director. Through you, Chair, Trustee McDonald. We're watching that line very closely because we're doing some innovative things. One of the things is that we're realizing that for our kindergarten campaign, and Mark will come up to the microphone with Terry now, is that perhaps the traditional model would be to take a whole bunch of advertisement out in all your dailies, the Citizen, Recorder, Times, the Standard, Freeholder, and sort of blanket that and hope the community gets that. Well, we've done some research and we found that you have to have a comprehensive, layered approach to this that would involve the radio, the social media, may involve also other types of weeklies, and even the schools pushing out their information through their websites and through their Facebooks. But it all has to be organized in a comprehensive way with also a radio campaign. And what you're looking at is a multi-tiered approach to attracting people to our brand. And that's probably the most significant piece we've learned, is that I don't think you'll ever lose the credibility of sort of taking the radio and Facebook and directing people to the newspaper or direct them to the website. But we know that you can't sort of pick one horse to ride in the show. And the early savings that we have, we really haven't said, well, we're going to take this and apply this, but we have done some things in staff training. For example, Cindy made reference to the fact that she's had training in how to use different tools to do searches, or to have different tools that are going 24 hours a day, sort of checking and taking a look at your brand in the public in a variety of different places. So that's where we're right now at the stage of the sort of halfway review of what's the impact of our thinking differently. And so between Terry and Mark, I know this is something that we've been talking about in our weekly meetings about the potential savings in some areas. And as you know, Trustee McDonald, there are other areas then that we probably will be spending a bit more in. And right now that is truly in staff development and training. Terry?
Through you, Chair, the director has nailed that one. It's exactly what's going on. We found ways to better target our advertising. Therefore, we were able to save money at the same time. So the next step is along the line of, yes, what other PD opportunities would there be for staff, and not just related to advertising, but certainly that would be part of it, promotional, et cetera. Are there other avenues and opportunities that we need to be becoming better at, better versed with, and therefore have a better bang for the buck, really, when it comes to the promotion and advertising that we do. And there's a branding element within that too, and Trustee McDonald, I know, has asked that question before around branding and an opportunity perhaps to revisit some of those options as well.
No, that's great. I think I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think there's an opportunity here for us to understand, or I guess I have a gut check as to what's really a better bang for our buck, as you said. Because I think, we know that print media circulation is down, those types of things, and if our target audience is the 20 to 34, 35, I think Mark had said, those people, they're getting their information in different ways. So what I wanted to make sure, though, is that if there was a savings, was the savings being reallocated in other ways so that you can benefit from those savings? And that's kind of what I wanted to get, and I think you've answered that from a PD standpoint, and that's fine. Mr. Chair, I have one last question, if I may.
Okay, go ahead.
One of the things that we as trustees have as well is there's a daily news brief, as a clipping type process that the communication department does. And I think it's an important piece for us as trustees to, and I believe it goes out to the entire system, but it's an important piece for people within education to understand what's happening outside or inside of our board area at times as it relates to education, or even on a peripheral level, how it may oversect with what we have to do in education. I think there's probably a better way to do that, and Cindy touched upon the fact that she uses Google Alerts. I think Google Alerts can be developed and fine-tuned to the individual. Some people would want to know a tremendous amount of information. Some people will only know one thing, one particular area. And I think if there could be some PD associated to that, or a one-page help setup type thing for Google Alerts, that could be used to help trustees and to help administrators and anybody within our system to establish those Google Alerts. And I think that would free up some time for our communication people then to not have to sit and scour the information and actually do some other things that probably will have more rewarding benefits for them and for us. Just a question and whether there's any feedback on that.
Through you, Chair, and the piece there is that we will continue to monitor that, because I think right now, as we transition to a sort of 24/7 look at taking information in, that you're not going to be waiting around for 10 o'clock in the morning for Mark or Allison or Cindy to say, here's what we've got right now. I think the thing we have talked about at our weekly meetings, the whole team, is how do we remain nimble and give you information in a timely fashion when you need it at the time that you need it. And this is, we are going to take your question, and I think that's a good Monday morning question for the team. How do we remain nimble and accurate? And we know that some people, okay, they look for it at 10 o'clock and they mumble if it's not there by then. We may have to change the culture of how we're looking at information, that it's maybe something you're looking at several times in the day. So thank you for that. And we'll take that as an agenda item for our Monday meeting.
Thanks. I think my piece on that is to make sure that the time spent in the communication department is getting messaging out as opposed to feeding messaging back into us, because I think there's probably a better bang for our buck if we have the individuals working that way. There are systems in place that can help feed the information back. So, by all means, have that discussion, and I think evaluating how much time is placed into that is probably worth the discussion as well.
Absolutely. Good call.
Well, and I think that there's an expectation even from the media standpoint that we have announcements and some of those stories at our fingertips far faster than the once a morning delivery. So I know for myself, I have those Google alerts set up so that I get those. Also, Cindy helps out quite a bit by highlighting activities through the day that perhaps David and I should be aware of in case we need to comment on. Did you have something you wanted to add to this particular topic, Trustee Carpenter?
It was in reference to the daily briefings that are coming out, and through you, Chair, I'd just like to commend the committee or the group, the communications department, for putting in links now instead of the whole article. I think it saves space on the computers, that we all have problems getting them filled up and have to delete. But having the link there is much more helpful to be able to go directly to the one that you're interested in, not have to scroll through them all. So thank you for that.
Okay, Trustee McCrae, do you have any comments or questions?
I just want to say kudos to the communication and relationship management team. I think they've done an incredible job. They've come a long way in 9 months. I would like to ask just one question through you, Chair, and that is, in comparison to our competitors, where are we as far as communication and relationship management? Do we know what our competitors, where they are in terms of of communication and relationship management, and how do we stack up?
So I presume by competitors you're speaking about our coterminous boards.
That's correct.
Any feedback on that, Mr. Simser or Director?
Let me respond. First of all, the trustees shining the light on the communications department has made us come closer together and tighter, and for ourselves to recognize that we have to become more competitive. Recently, we have, in working with the Trillium Lakelands Board, who've been involved in our co-march to the Labor Relations Board, we really found out that we were significantly ahead of them in getting information out and taking information in. In fact, they very quickly appreciated our work and wanted to understand how we got it so quick. And I know that we explained what Cindy does and how we do the Google searches, alerts, and so forth as we go through so that we can be on top of things. I know from our coterminous board, they do not have the same level of support as we do in our communications department, and they have not really understood, to my knowledge, the relationship management piece, and that they would still continue to work from the more standardized process that you push out a media release and you wait to see if it, if you throw it against the wall, did it stick? And Terry's much closer involved in this because one of the pieces that we're getting back from third party, we've had some third party people come in to talk to us, and one of them it was Amber MacArthur, who has come down very early in the process, then came back a second time. You may recognize her work on CTV. She has a Sunday morning show, and she has a show on CP24 as well. And she's come back and said, you guys have moved 100 miles in this particular area, particularly the social media part, and the part of what earlier I was talking with Trustee McAllister about, was actually taking information in, is that we're doing a better job with that. But this is all cutting edge stuff, and we've also learned in the private sector, the large corporations like Johnson & Johnson and places like that are significantly ahead. And I would say if you were working with the City of Ottawa, they have quite an impressive communications department as well that is really working on the whole aspect of Facebook ready, Twitter ready, blog ready, all the different streams that you can push information out or take information in. They're doing a very strong job with it. So we've learned to learn from other groups, but as a Board of Education, I would say with the fact we looked at this so closely, it's pushed us very, very hard to become quite responsive.
May I ask one other question, Chair?
I think that Mr. Simser wants to add.
Okay.
Well, just through you, Chair, I would emphasize that I believe, yes, our focus on communications and being a two-way dialogue is really a critical part of what we're doing well, and it doesn't mean it couldn't use some improvement. We learn more every day, but I can tell you from the observance that I have of what the coterminous board is doing with regard to communications, there's virtually no comparison between the inroads we've made and the inroads they haven't, and I say that with respect.
You know, just before you go to your next question, Trustee McCrae, one of the things that I've noted is that really, you know, the Catholic, like to compare our communication with our coterminous boards can invite misinterpretation or even misdirection. The fact is that across the province, public school boards are consistently under greater scrutiny than their coterminous counterparts, whether they are French public, French Catholic, or Catholic. That just is part of the culture, and so to some extent, we need to almost look at a different path, just because our reality is that much different. And to be honest, I like the scrutiny. I think that I'd rather have people watching us and pushing us to be better. So, but I think that we always have to be careful when we look at those comparisons, because it really is not, we're not comparing apples to apples. Your next question, Trustee McCrae?
Well, just to add to that, I agree with you to a certain extent, Chair, but at the end of the day, it's about customer service. And part and parcel of customer service is effective communication and relationship building. So I just think that the better we can do this, the better the chance is that we'll have students to continue to stay with our board. The next question I wanted to ask, and this is more of at a ground root level, and Cindy commented on the continuous support that we're giving our staff within our schools with their websites. Who exactly will be given the responsibility within our schools, at our school sites, to look after our website? Who will that fall under?
Director?
Trustee McCrae, the responsibility for an up-to-date and accurate website, Facebook page, or Twitter account is the responsibility of the principal. And she or he would create the team or the appropriate person to be delegated to. Well, we're seeing a bit of a pattern, and I would encourage Cindy to respond to this. We're seeing a pattern now that we did this marvelous thing a couple of years ago through Rick Gales and the HR department. We identified an area of weakness in our system, and that is many of our office administrators, great people, were not comfortable with the modern, very up-to-date accounting procedures that have come along in our schools to be accountable for the dollars and cents. And you may remember, Trustee McCrae, that KPMG has said, you guys have come a long way, and you can almost account for every hot dog. Well, that has come at an expense that we had some people spending a great deal of time counting, checking, and acting like an accountant. And we saw people who were quite miserable in the role because they didn't choose to become office administrators working with the public to become accountants. And when we had created the new position of and give me the name of the positions I just lost. Sorry? For the financial assistance to the families of schools, it has created opportunities, as you know, Trustee McCrae, for example, at Caldwell, because now that's been taken away from the person, the banking and the accounting procedures, that she's had time to move into Facebook, into Twitter, and to do things that really serve the community effectively. And so what we see in this particular case, the principal, the office administrator, and if you take a look at the GAN situation, a team would be responsible for the daily, if not hourly, update of your proper Facebook website and other accounts that you'd be using.
Fair enough.
Do you have another question, Trustee McCrae?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Just as a note, if you want to mute your phone and you don't, you can use *6, and you use *6 to unmute as well.
Did I need to mute my phone?
Well, I think it's just easier for everybody if people keep their phones on mute.
Less feedback.
Less background noise for everybody.
Okay.
Okay. Trustee Richards, do you have any comments or questions?
I'd just like to say that I'm quite impressed with how far the communications department has come in the 9 months, and I look forward to the next 9 months and looking to see how far they continue to move.
Trustee Swan.
Hi, I apologize. I'm trying to read this by candlelight here. I guess I might have missed some because my hider is 90% out. But anyway, I've got some candles going, and I just wanted to say congratulations. I, too, concur with the rest of the trustees. I think it's fabulous, and especially engaging the two-way communication. And that's where my questions kind of fall under that category. So as we're engaging this two-sided communication, for instance, on Facebook, on the Upper Canada Board site, I'm just wondering what proactive measures are being taken upon receipt of the comments. I may have missed this discussion because I was away from my phone a while trying to get some candles out.
Oh, you're fine. It's a good question, Trustee Swan, Director.
It's a great question, Trustee Swan. The fact is, one thing that we looked at when we started to monitor the traffic on Facebook and monitor the traffic on the Twitter feeds and different other area websites and blogs, we came to the conclusion that we had to have a procedure created within the department because, as you know, some people Twitter and send things out all the time, and they say some nasty things about us and other people, and they hide behind a funny group of names or numbers or whatever. And we determined very quickly that we would not be responding to anonymous critics or even people anonymously who said good things about us. And so this was the first trial and test for us, because there were some people anonymously who were saying some very nice things about us, and we had to, as a group, say, well, if we're going to pull down anonymous criticism, we have to also pull down anonymous good things that are said. So we've been following that as our first rule, that if something comes up there and the person or persons is not putting their proper name on it, then what we do is that we will take that away. Now, after that, when people have spontaneously sent things to us, either on Facebook with their name, and as you know, on Facebook you cannot be anonymous. In the Facebook, we've really used it as an opportunity to deal with people who are not content, or if they have praise for us, to find out where it came from as you go through. And so what within that particular case, let's say that we had a parent or community member that had on Facebook had said, that was really a dumb place to put the new parking lot. What we would do then is find the right person, potentially Jeremy, and we'd send that to Jeremy. Could you help us with a quick and timely response? Let the person know this is why the parking lot went there. These are the constraints. Here's the property that we owned. And so that we can actually get back to them very, very quickly. And so what we've been trying to do, and this is through the chair and myself, and when it's picked up from the communications department, is move that to a person who in a timely manner can answer with a good, well-informed answer to an inquiry. And what we have been trying to do is remind each other that that's not, often it doesn't have to be a 10-page response. Often it can be, some very simple information, because this happened, and then they come back and go, oh, I understand now. Or it'll be a phone call saying, we saw the following things that came up. Could we go a little deeper into your concern? And I think it's made us more responsive and more sensitive to what's going on in the community. It's also helped us out when a person has gone on and put very inaccurate information in. We've been able to correct them. For example, if they said, well, what happened here was really, really stupid, and someone should be fired over this. And we're able to call them back and give them the full details of what had happened. And what we've noticed that sometimes they pull the things, information right away. Or we've had in several cases apologies saying, I've got all the information, I understand it, thank you very much. Or we apologize and say, we're really unfortunate that was the decision that was made, and we will learn from this and we'll apply it to the organization. And that's where we've been moving with the information. And I would say from my perspective, to further answer your question, I don't think it has taken that much time and energy to help build our relationships with the community. I'm not answering on there all the time. So between potentially Allison, Terry, and Cindy, you may want to respond to this good question.
And just before you do, I think that one of the things that we need to realize is that to some extent organic responses are appropriate, and so. Today, Trustee Swan, you dropped in the link to the video outlining the procedure on the process used on inclement weather in response to concerns raised by parents. And I think that that's entirely appropriate. I mean, obviously we have to be very, very careful, but I think as trustees we know when we should make those types of contributions, and when we should seek counsel. So I think that definitely is part of it, because there's no way that 3, 4, 6, 10, 12 people are ever going to keep up with the volume of information that's out there.
Through you, Chair. I just wanted to talk briefly about when the director mentioned about the time and energy that goes into the monitoring. Of course, we will check these sites daily, sometimes multiple times a day, but really dependent on what the issue is or what the day is, checking these sites is very quick, and forwarding the issue or the question or the comment to the appropriate person is also a very quick thing to do. So it's kind of something that we just end up doing throughout the day. And we know a lot of other people also check the board sites and the school sites throughout the day too. So it's kind of now just within the culture of the department to do it, and it's not even thought about really anymore.
Okay, Trustee Swan, any further comments or questions? Okay,
Yes, it does. Thank you. Sorry, I was trying to get some hydro here.
well, we admire your tenacity and sticking with us. Just don't burn your papers up while you're with the cameras there. Go ahead.
I think she was.
Okay, you're done? Okay. Trustee McAllister.
Question for each of you, actually. I want to thank you for involving the trustees in the staff PD, because I'm not sure I can speak for all of my colleagues, but I have a lot to learn in this area, so I look forward to participating. Mark, I have a question for you, if you don't mind. You mentioned more radio, less print, etc. How much, what percentage of our work is done in-house in this area, or in all of the areas that we're talking about?
Well, when you say in-house, I'm afraid I can't give you an exact percentage, but for instance, with the radio campaign, what we did was I wrote the script. I arranged for a student working with Commonwealth Public School to help us voice that. Allison, through her connections with the radio station, quickly got on board and made sure that we were in the studio fairly promptly. So I guess in that case, I think we probably ended up doing maybe 50–60% of the work. With some ads, just the quality. I do ads using programs like Quark, and I can do a pretty good job. But there's some scenarios, like with the full-time kindergarten campaign, that I think we really need to have a professional. And so in that case, I mean, we design the ads. I look at the timing of the ads. I make sure we have accurate lists for various dates for the schools. But you know, we need someone like Gaetan, Gaetan LaForce, who's our graphic artist, and she helps do the design for us. So I can't give you an exact percentage, but depending on the campaign, we probably do between, I don't know, 30–40% of the work, and some will do 100%.
So just so I could just add in, and when you do a radio, like some of that production, like some of the production of the ad is part of buying the ad, right? Like it's not additional over and above costs.
Yeah, you know, we decide, we work with the radio ad representative, and we decide, you know, how much we're going to purchase. You know, we'll work on budgeting, we'll work on timing, but as I said, it all depends on the campaign.
Incidentally, Mark, I do hear some good comments from the schools concerning the work that you do in helping them facilitate videos and various projects.
Glad to hear that.
Allison, can I go ahead with that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Allison, it's been great working with you on the Upper Canada TV and other projects, but can you tell me to what extent we are going to be able to segment, say, parts of these meetings or parts of any Upper Canada TV production, so that I, as a member of the public, can easily identify and find what I want to watch quickly and easily?
So through you, Chair. Currently, as I mentioned earlier, we use Ustream. That's what we use to stream the board meetings. That's what we use to stream all live videos. there are functions through Ustream that offer us, we are able to organize our videos and our live streams in different categories, but we're also looking at, we found a new service through YouTube that we have to apply for, and I've already sent in the application, and it will allow us to live stream. It will give us a whole bunch of different functions that we don't really have with Ustream at the moment or have never had before. And YouTube is a very intuitive tool for a lot of people. A lot of people know YouTube, even just to hear it, and it's a very quick tool to learn. And so we're hoping that we will have that function in the near future, and then we can categorize all of these videos that we end up doing in a very simple way and easy to find manner.
Okay, thank you.
In addition to that, though, with the web streaming piece and the whole capture of this particular meeting, the TriCaster, which is the technology we use right now, has a whole bunch of additional functionality that we're not exploiting yet and will be over time, to include lower thirds, so that when you're speaking, your name comes up. And that can be added during the production. It can also be added post-production, but and that'll also allow us to more easily chop stuff up in chapters, so that we can achieve what you're talking about. So that's definitely part of the vision behind the web meetings anyway, our meetings.
And a final question to Terry. Terry, as you unroll this plan and develop it, which I told you at the beginning I thought was very good, wherein lies the greatest challenge in this plan for you?
Through you, Chair, I'm going to sound a bit like a spin doctor when I answer this question, but I see it as opportunity as opposed to challenge, but I appreciate the question. I would say there are challenges in every area, but they really are opportunities. It's really exciting to see that you can use so many new tools to communicate in very, very different ways. You can be more immediate in communicating and listening, and communicating is listening. When I look at the plan, I believe everything is achievable. Some parts are more complex than others. Crisis communications protocol, for example, you know, it could easily be an 80-page document, or you can streamline it where you create a document that people can actually use and won't sit on a shelf. The best example I can think of in my experience in education is when it comes to labor negotiations. You know, you've got a manual that's so thick, and you hope it stays on the shelf because you don't want to have to use it in a situation of a strike or other type of labor action, obviously. But you've got that rich information available for when you need it, and that's what a crisis communications protocol is so important to have, because most organizations, they learn to deal with crisis when they're in crisis, and that's not a proactive approach. And so our idea of being more proactive is a very, very important one. But I look at the whole plan, Trustee McAllister, and I see that I see tremendous opportunities, and that we've got a great team. I can tell you that Allison and Mark and Cindy they're hardworking, very, very dedicated, but they're very talented, and there's a lot of resource available in this department to take it even higher, and that certainly is what we're going to do.
Best of luck.
Thank you. Lisa Raymond has also reminded me that another functionality that'll come that'll help you, Trustee McAllister, in your quest to have the meetings broken down, is that we'll have the agenda item when you go to the past agendas, we'll have the link to the video for that particular agenda topic. So that'll help too. Are there any other comments or questions? Anybody online that has any final comments?
Yeah, just one.
Yeah, go ahead, Trustee McPherson.
Yeah, I thought you'd forgotten me all here by myself.
Oh, sorry, I did forget you.
Yeah, you got
apologize for that.
wrong. I just would like to commend the communications department. We had our transition meeting in Perth last night, and I was part of the group that was establishing our communications strategy for the 7 to 12 transition. And what I found curious about it is that it was largely centered around school-based websites, social media, followed closely by the board's assets within your websites and things like that. And the last one that was given consideration was actually the local media, the local newspapers and radio. Apparently, the group of parents that were out feel that they can get all the information they need on this process from largely board-based communication strategies, which I found a little curious. So just congratulations to the group. Like everyone has said, you've come a long way in the last few months.
Anyone else? Director?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and through you, Chair, to the team. And you've heard some accolades, and that's nice because we've spent a great deal of time on this, and I'd like to thank Terry Davies, Linda Lumsden, and a couple of other people who have given a great deal of their time to mirror and give us feedback as we've gone along the way. But one of the things that we wanted to achieve, and we can never become arrogant about this, and we can't become overconfident, is that we wanted to get the respect and confidence of the people around this table. We said that we had 3 lenses to look at everything we do by, and to make sure that we've often said the communications department's about spin. Well, it's not about spin at all. It's about the truth in a transparent manner. And we've said that if there is 3 lenses, is that this Board of Trustees can be confident that our board's a good board and that we put kids first, that we have physically, the whole sense of physical management of the organization, we are responsible for every cent. And then the final one, this is a caring organization in everything we do for both the students, the people who work for us, and our communities. And I think that you heard from Trustee McDonald, I think we have to really understand that the communications department serves every single department. And I'm pleased that we've got some positive feedback, and we're starting the journey in a positive way, and we've got a long way to go. But thank you for your hard work. I think it's been worth it, and I think the learning that we've been through makes us better people. So thank you.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Director, and certainly it's been very, very supportive to have the full communication team at our service supporting us as we've been dealing with the negotiations issue through this whole period. They have consistently ensured that we've had timely information and forwarded replies and dealt with inquiries that have made our jobs a lot easier. So thank you. And I guess we're done. There's no recommendation, so we will hear from you sometime in the future. When do we?
We will take, if this is totally acceptable, we will take draft off this, and this now will become, I think you saw that was on there, this now will become the work of the department approved by the board.
So we'll have an update maybe in 6 months. Does that sound good? 6 months sound like a reasonable time? Does that sound reasonable to you as well?
No, I think we did the plan ahead to do the May.
So we'll do March, April, May, June, July, August, September. So September. We'll do it when you come back in September. That sounds good?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. All right. I notice all my colleagues decorated in pink, and certainly it was my intention to pick up a nice pink carnation, but I ended up not getting here in time. So. Nonetheless, my thoughts are with the cause. Mr. Dawes, you're going to present wrap up final report on Boundary 2020. It's hard to believe that we've come to the end of that process. The process going back to, what was it, 2007 when we started, 2008 when we passed the final report, and here we are almost 5 years, 5-6 years later. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. And I concur, it is amazing how fast time flies. It was in fact the 2007-08 school year when the Boundary 2020 review was conducted, and here we are almost 5 years later. It's certainly my pleasure and honor to have the opportunity to provide to you, I'll try and be brief, but our final status report on Boundary 2020 and Building 2020. September 2012, of course, marked the final date of our final implementation phase of Building 2020. So my intent tonight is just to give you an overview of all of the work that's been done. It's really an opportunity for the board to give one final kind of helicopter view or reflection on all of the work that's been done, and maybe some thoughts about where we go from here. And I'll certainly begin also by recognizing my co-chair through the Boundary 2020 review and Building 2020 process, Superintendent Charlotte Patterson. So with that, I'll begin. Thank you. And I found it interesting recently. I was reading one of our national newspapers and was reminded that 2013 is a landmark year in Canada, because 2013 is the first year that young people aged 15 to 24 will fall below the number of people aged 55 to 64 years of age in this country. What a remarkable statistic that is when you think about that, and the impact that our aging population has had and is continuing to have on Canadian society. And the Upper Canada District School Board, I think, should never hold back from giving itself a genuine pat on the back for understanding the impact of this demographic shift and reacting to it. And in doing so, I took an opportunity to go back and put this graph in the report that you have before you tonight. This was taken or originally produced with the Quest 2020 review way back in 2006. That was the review that the board took on to review its administrative services at head office. And you can see what we were looking at back in 2005. We'd already seen a remarkable amount of elementary school enrollment decline, and we're projecting a continual decline from 1995, expecting about 7,800 pupil reduction. And it's interesting to note that we have, in fact, come very, very close to those original projections. But I just say again, I think it was worthwhile for us to take the opportunity to look at those enrollments and respond to them with a very strategic and systematic, purposeful action. And we did that, of course, through the Boundary 2020 review. And this was the motion that was passed by the board to start off the review. And we can continue to remind ourselves that it was done for the right reasons. Of course, we talk about, through Boundary 2020 and Building 2020, the operations behind it all, but at the very heart of it, of course, was optimizing opportunities for students. We said it back then, and we continue to say it now. That's what it was about, and we're seeing the results from that work now. And of course, following Boundary 2020, which wrapped up in May of 2008, we moved very quickly and immediately into the implementation process of all of the decisions that were made for Boundary 2020, which, by the way, all of those decisions are attached to your report as Appendix B. But we moved right into Building 2020 starting in September 2008, and again right up to most recently September 2012. And of course, as a part of the Building 2020 process was another review. That was the Cornwall Community Schools review, because we recognized at the end of Boundary 2020 there were still some unresolved issues in Cornwall that we needed to address. And so we did that as a part of the implementation process for Boundary 2020, which we called again the Cornwall Community Schools review. So there have been a wide number of deliverables that have been seen by the board over the last number of years, which wrapped up most recently in September 2012, and they tended to fall under four major categories, beginning with school building closures, consolidations, and program relocations. At latest count, we have 15 schools that we've either closed or consolidated or had program relocations, if we include the East Front and Gladstone schools, which we still have to confirm a date on those, but we have funding for those now, so we can include those. One of the other objectives, of course, of Boundary 2020 and Building 2020 implementation was to oversee equity of access for all students right across our board to French language instruction. And if you recall back to the days prior to Boundary 2020, our board had a very varied and widespread practices in French language instruction. It was really the result of regional practices that were pre-amalgamation, and so the board saw Boundary 2020 as an opportunity to make that more standard, to create equal opportunities regardless of where students moved from one community to another across our board, to make sure that they would still have access to the same French language instructional program that they were in previously. And we wanted to make sure that we could harmonize our French language instruction so that in deciding on providing early French immersion as the defined French immersion program for each family of schools, that each student would have access to that program, and that's been achieved. And there was also a harmonization of the minutes of instruction that are provided in French language instruction for the core language program. So from this graph, from this chart, you can see the extent to which early French immersion is now available right across our board on an equitable basis by each family of schools. Objective 3 of the review, of course, was our K-6 and 7-12 school environments, and it was certainly a topical discussion that happened throughout the Boundary 2020 review, and into Building 2020 we've seen great opportunities happening, thank you David, with our families of schools through this grade structure. And we did that through 3 phases. September 2009 was our Team Apollo schools. September 2011 was our Team Horizon schools, and most recently, September 2012, our Team Discovery schools. And with that, we only have 2 school families now that aren't 7-12 and K-6, Smiths Falls and Van Cleek Hill, with the Perth school family now scheduled to become K-6, 7-12 effective September 2014. I think maybe one of the things we overlook a bit is the impact of school boundary alignment. And if you, what I'm trying to show here is the green maps represent, I just took one little snapshot of a part of our board that allows us to look at elementary school boundaries as they compare to the high school boundaries for that same area. That's showing from the green map on the left, compared that to the blue maps on the right. That's the way that same area looks today. So if you were able to take, for example, that bottom quadrant map and overlap that on top of the blue map up on top, you'd see an exact match. And that's really important because when we have really consistent feeding patterns to our school boundaries, we're allowed to ensure that we have a really deep understanding of our family of schools arrangements and that kids aren't moving from one school community to another school community. So I feel like probably now we're probably one of the boards that has the best boundary alignment in the province, and I think there's been really a good ability to build our family of schools arrangements through school boundary alignment. And those boundary alignments really have reflected what our parents and students and communities were asking for anyway. So there's, on top of the deliverables, there's been a number of other outcomes that we wanted to draw to your attention tonight that have come out of Boundary 2020 and Building 2020, beginning with our adolescent learners. And there's been ongoing discussion, of course, and through presentations to the board through Building 2020 about how our grades 7 to 12 schools are moving forward. And we continue to remind ourselves that this has always been about identifying the special needs of that special age group. I mean, they're not big grade 6s. Did I get that right? And they're not small grade 9s, right? They have a unique need into themselves. And what I wanted to do with this graph was take an opportunity to show you, of course, one of the key things we were looking for in building our 7 to 12 schools was to help students with that transition point between grade 8 and grade 9. It's a really, really important part of the student journey. And so that's what these numbers are meant to show you. You can see under the heading all UCDSB CDSB schools combined, we're showing the ratio between students in grade 9 and the number of students that were in grade 8 the previous year. So you can see in 2007 it was 1.11 for all UCDSB schools combined. 2008, 1.07. Apollo year 1 was 2009. It dropped to 1.05, 1.06, 1.00, and most recently 1.12. Under the Team Apollo Horizon and Discovery schools, the numbers in red, those are the comparable grade 8 to 9 retention ratios specific for those schools, aligned with each year that they came into implementation. And then over to the far right, that's a comparison with all remaining schools. And I just put those numbers up as a general indicator, and it's still early days, but we can feel good that from this view, we can see that our grade 7 to 12 schools are having what we were hoping for as an impact on the transition of those students. Those students are choosing to stay in those schools in their transition point between grade 8 and grade 9. And that's a good news item. We've also talked a lot throughout Building 2020 about our K-6 school cultures. In each family of schools, of course, it wasn't just about creating grade 7 to 12 schools, it was also about creating K-6 schools from schools that were prior to that, K-8 schools. And these schools were like opening new schools as well. And we had presentations to the board from information that we've received from our schools, most notably our school principals, about how these school cultures have changed. And it's been very positive indeed, as you can see from the comments on this table that were previously presented based on a survey of school principals a couple of years ago. Yeah. You've seen this data before, but I wanted to present it to you one more time, perhaps under a slightly different context. This is showing our community response to what we call participation. In this case, JKSK participation. When we talk about JKSK participation, we're talking about the number of JKSK students as a proportion of the total age 4 and 5 population for our board's area, okay? Sometimes we'll refer to it as market share. And you can see that our participation rate in the Upper Canada District School Board from 2003 to 2011 has increased from 44.7 to 47.8%. But what I find really interesting about this graph is that little dip that we see between 2005 and 2006. And that was just prior to, of course, the Boundary 2020 review, when I think the impact of enrollment decline was really starting to hit home to our communities. And I think we might have felt maybe a little apprehensive in taking on such a wide system review, that people might have said, you know, I'm not sure we're buying into what you're doing or taking on as a board. But it's interesting to note that our participation rate has continued to increase since 2006, upwards to 2007 and 8, when the Boundary 2020 review was taken and the Building 2020 implementation process that followed. I also think it's important for us to recognize our ability as an organization to take on this kind of change process. And I've called this slide our familiarity with change process. In other words, we've become a board in going through this that has become, I think it's fair to say, somewhat accustomed to change. These are not easy to take on change processes with a really large organization. It takes practice to work through this. And I think we have worked through this and involved our schools and our communities to a large degree, to a point where we're now as an organization somewhat familiar and accustomed to change processes. This is an example of the change process that was organized for the Discovery schools for their 2012 startup. And you can see all of the interconnection that's required to take on this kind of work. And that was typical of the change processes that we saw throughout the board, throughout the Building 2020 process. In the Boundary 2020 review, you may recall we talked about the concept of essential and effective schools. That what we were trying to do as a system in recognizing the impact of enrollment decline was to commit to our most effective and essential schools. We have some schools in the Upper Canada District School Board that are so rurally located on the periphery of our jurisdiction that it would be unwise to consider a closure or consolidation of those schools by virtue of the extreme distances that would be required for those students to attend another school. Similarly, we have some buildings that are newer than other buildings, so it wouldn't make a lot of sense to consider a closure consolidation of those newer facilities. That's what we mean by the concept of essential schools. Effective schools, of course, are those schools that are high performance schools and really creating innovative learning environments for our students. So looking forward, as we did in the Boundary 2020 review, we want to commit to our most effective and essential schools. The purpose of this graph is to demonstrate that we are still a system of small schools, and we have to continue to remind ourselves of that. Despite going through the enormous change process that we did in Boundary and Building 2020, we still have 51% of our elementary schools with less than 200 students. Similarly, on the secondary front, we have 13 secondary schools, that's 56%, that have an average daily enrollment of fewer than 400 students. So we continue to be a system of small schools. With these graphs, I wanted to take an opportunity to demonstrate where we're at right now from a very, very purely operational point of view, looking at our schools as they relate right now to the availability of school space. And you can draw a couple of conclusions from these graphs. Number one, on the elementary side, when we went through the Boundary 2020 review, there were several school areas that had higher number of school closures and consolidations, namely the North Dundas, Seaway, and South Granville areas. You can also see that Boundary 2020 was not a review that really had any particular focus on secondary schools. Really, it was only General Vanier School in Cornwall that saw a closure as a result of the Boundary 2020 process. And you can also see as a system, we're hovering around 77, 76% as we compare enrollment to the availability of overall school space in our buildings. Now, I put that number out cautiously because it uses a calculation method that's very high level, and again, that's a system number. We would want to, of course, look at much more closer detail how that space exists if we were to dig deeper, but it's a starting point. So looking forward, we can recognize that there are still some areas coming out of the Building 2020 process that require some attention, and some of those areas actually have been addressed recently and are mentioned in the report. We have 3 projects in progress right now. I mentioned earlier East Front and Gladstone School. The board can now access ministry funding to complete the Boundary Building 2020 directive to consolidate East Front and Gladstone schools in the Cornwall family of schools. So that's one project we have ongoing right now. Kemptville Public School, the board's now able to access ministry funding to address overcrowding issues at Kemptville Public School in the North Grenville family of schools. And mentioned earlier again, Perth K-6, 7 to 12. Due to originally unforeseen available space at Perth DCI, the board's now able to proceed with K-6, 7 to 12 grade structures in that family of schools. 3 other issues that we might want to be able to focus on in the years to come. General Vanier School, with the Boundary Building 2020 relocation of General Vanier students in the Cornwall family of schools, we do have a need for a long-term commitment for this building, which is currently shared with the Catholic District School Board of Eastern Ontario. North Dundas family of schools, there's an issue with overcrowding due to early French immersion programming at Winchester School. And I mentioned earlier Smiths Falls and Van Cleek Hill. We continue to pay close attention to the enrollments and availability of space at those 2 high schools to know when we might be able to accommodate grades 7 to 12 structures in those families of schools as well. So again, I thank you for the opportunity tonight to present this high-level overview, and I hope you found it interesting, and would be happy to entertain any questions you might have. Thank you.
Okay, comments start in the room. Trustee Karkner?
Through you, Chair, thank you for that presentation. I wasn't on the board when it all began, but I've been involved since then. And I'm looking at your discussion, or looked at what you had said about Bankley Hill and Smiths Falls. And of course, Bankley Hill High School is one of my schools, and when I'm in that school, I sense that we are over capacity when it comes to student enrollment, and we've got portables in the back of that school. So I don't know how you expect to get the 7 and 8s in there unless there is definitely going to be some boundary changes, and then that's a big issue that's coming forward. So I don't see it happening in the very near future at VCI, although it's the trend in the board to get 7 to 12 schools. There's just not room there.
I think that's why it was left off all along. Yeah.
I understand that, but
Yep. Any other comments online? Trustee Buckland, Trustee Garrow.
Yeah, just through you, Chair. Great report, and of course I remember the tumultuous time of getting this, and I think that it certainly showed foresight at that time that going this route, even though there were some, if you want, cries from the wilderness out there, but getting through it and seeing success of it, and of course there, it's really commendable in that. I know there are still some issues, but it's good planning.
Trustee McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say I think this is probably one of the better reports we've seen in a while. It has a lot of information for us to get our teeth in prior to the meeting. We were able to absorb this and then have an overview with some of the key points kind of as on the monitor. So that was hats off to Mr. Dawes for actually having all this information included in the package for us. The question I do have, though, is around the next steps, I guess. When I look at this report, we look at the graph on 9-1, and I understand regardless of what we do, we're going to be a series of small schools compared to the rest of the province, or at least compared to some of the main areas in the province. But when I look at schools that have less than 100 students, I look at those and I question, how best are we serving the needs of those kids, and what type of services are we losing out on because we're serving the needs of 100 kids in one small school in other larger schools that we have within our own context. We hear of issues around boundary alignment from time to time, and I think it's perhaps a time that we set in place a continuous review of boundaries to ensure that we're meeting the needs of the communities. I think it's one of the things that I've always said is that a boundary is only as good as the students and the families living in that area. If they choose to go to a coterminous board, the boundary really doesn't serve us very well. So I want to put it out there and ask the question as to where or what we will do as far as the next step goes.
Director?
Trustee McDonald, you were there when everyone said these things shouldn't happen, and as Trustee Garrow said, now people are saying we were brilliant. I know that the other directors who I run with regularly in Toronto wish that they had done this a long time ago, because some of them are dealing with schools now because they didn't do it in 2007, 2008, that have really become one-room schoolhouses. Schools down to 27 and 30 kids that at one time held 200 kids. And what happens is if we don't review regularly, as you have said, to sort of create a pattern of review, the parents tell us by their footsteps that they're going to go to a school where they get music, where they get a drama festival, where they get a Christmas celebration that they get, a baseball team, that they get a basketball team. And when you get down, as we learned in Dixon's Corners and places like that, when you get down to 30 kids, you don't have the ability to put a volleyball team in place, and the kids can't do the things that we think are necessary for schooling. It's probably that time again where I think that we should have the courage to say, are our kids getting the best from us? And then also, and I do appreciate your kind remarks, David, for Phil's report. It was concise, filled with lots of information, and pointed in a direction. And I believe what Phil is telling us is that we have essential schools that will be there even if they were to get down to 25, 30, or 40 kids, because they're in such a situation in a community that you have to have the public flag raised. However, there are other places where we have to say, with courage, we should listen to the parents who are telling us that if you don't have the courage to examine your boundaries and the size of your schools, then we will walk to the other public board, the separate board. And so it's that time perhaps that we take a look at the timing. I know that's critical, but I think we have to have a broader discussion about are we getting the proper level of engagement from the size of our school and the configuration of our schools.
So is there any sort of active plan, or would we have sort of a calendar set up then?
No. We're waiting for direction from you.
Okay. Trustee McCray. Trustee McCray. Trustee Richards. Trustee Swan.
Through you, Chair. These boundary realignments to coincide with the high schools, were these all decided during the 2020 process?
Yes.
Yes, they were. Yeah.
And is there a chance to revisit them? I know in some cases, for an example, I think the Meadowview one has not been revisited recently in light of the fact that there may not be sufficient room for all the grade 7 and 8s at TIS or BCI?
Through you, Chair. The TIS BCI.
Somebody is going to have to turn off the audio on the webcast.
I'll try again.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. The TIS BCI, if I'm understanding your question, the TIS BCI rollout was that flowed out of the Boundary 2020 recommendations. So those were program boundaries that were pre-approved. Students coming out of the feeder schools for TIS BCI have essentially the option of attending either of those schools for grades 7 through 12. Actual boundary reconfigurations, there have not been any since the Boundary 2020 review. In fact, the board has a boundary review policy. It's policy 433 that deals specifically with the processes required for communities to reconsider existing school boundaries.
And that route would require to come to the board.
That's correct, yes.
Any follow-up, Trustee Swan?
So, excuse me, so communities can still go through the process to ask for boundary reconsiderations.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, and it's laid out in policy 434.
Yes, I apologize. I don't have internet right now, so I can't refer to the notes I wrote. And then my next question on that is, I do have 4 small schools that are probably around 100 population, and I'm just wondering, I mean, unless we build new schools or new super schools or have the funding from the ministry, I mean, it's not feasible to close these schools. So when you say, or Trustee McDonald said, we aren't servicing the students. Well, I've talked to parents in my community, and I just kind of wanted to say, well, they're quite happy with the services they're getting at their small schools, and everybody knows I'm a big advocate of small rural schools. And I think we are servicing the students, and I think the staff bend over backwards to offer all the programming they can to these students, especially in the elementary panel, where sports like baseball isn't a sport.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Swan. I saw a hand up over here. Trustee McAllister?
I'm not sure my question is totally germane to this topic, but with regard to Charland, Tugwa, Glengarry District, and VCI, and the elementary feeder schools, are we seeing an impact of the migration of Anglo-Quebecers to these areas and our schools? And what are we doing to market the Upper Canada District School Board actively to that market area?
Director?
First of all, you're right. There is a pattern of new Canadians who want their kids educated English first that are moving into the area of from Hawkesbury right down through to Cornwall, and the mother or the father is doing a drive-in either day by day or driving in for the week and coming back, and we're seeing those numbers increase in our community. But we have no active campaign within the Pearson Board of Education or the Western School District of Quebec to do anything in there that particular way. I know both of the CEOs of those boards, spoken with them. It's not an issue for them. They don't see us as competition. From my perspective, I think they do understand that because they have a law, as you're aware of, John, that you're educated, if you come from a foreign country, that you come to Quebec and you're educated French first, and that's why we're picking these kids up. I don't know. I think that's a very political and loaded thing to get involved in, and I think we'd have to think about it if we were going to sort of active campaigns. I know by word of mouth in the Cornwall area, we have numbers of families and vans that drive in with the breadwinner, the man or the woman who's going in, and in many cases it's grandparents who are the caregiver during the course of the week. So that's quite interesting. But we do have a burgeoning population, and in our TR Leger schools, we have a very large population of ESL that we're starting to serve as we go through as well. Quite an interesting thing you've raised.
Anybody else online? Trustee McDonald?
Thank you. Just on those 2 points, the last two speakers. With respect to Trustee McAllister, I think we haven't seen a large exodus of individuals coming in from Western Quebec. I can speak with some knowledge, having worked for a township that does border the Quebec border. It's been a few years that I've worked there, but in dealing with the individuals that were moving into the area, few did have families. Many were individuals who were on the downslope of their working career, so had older families. I would say, though, in the city of Cornwall, as Director Thomas has said, that we are growing, in particular with some new Canadians, and growing is phrased lightly. I mean, city of Cornwall is not a growth area by any means, but certainly there are a number of new Canadians that are entering the city and joining us for their educational journey. With respect to Trustee Swan, I think if we ask many people if they are happy with the status of their level of education, regardless of the size of the school, many parents will say, "I'm very happy." But I think we need to question ourselves if we are meeting the needs. I think it's a question that the Board of Trustees must ask if we're meeting the needs of kids. I think when we get into a situation where we have kindergarten and grade 1 classes joined together for the purposes of the day, or triple grading in the school, those types of things. And I need to remind individuals that when we have a school of less than 100, we are staffing that school to make sure that we can best meet the needs of the school. We still have the opportunities that the triple grading can occur, but every time we do staff one of those schools, it becomes more difficult to staff a school of 400 or 500 students, or 350 for that matter, because when we look at the averages across the board. I think it's imperative, though, that this board regularly ask themselves whether we are doing the right things by doing nothing, or can we improve by doing something. And status quo doesn't necessarily mean that we're doing the right things.
Any other comments?
Through you, Chair.
Yep, go ahead.
I think that Trustee McDonald has hit on a very important point, as well as so has our director, and that is, when you get to the smaller schools, and I have some in my jurisdiction as well, it's pretty scary to have these discussions with these small communities. But the bottom line is that as boards representing our constituents and the taxpayer, we have to be courageous, and we need to look at these. And at the bottom line, it's all about providing the best quality of education for each one of those students. So I think this is something that we need to look at in the very near future.
Okay. Well, we're going to wait.
Through you, Chair?
Yep, go ahead. Go ahead, Trustee Swan. Trustee Swan? So, I heard two trustees, Trustee McDonald, Trustee McCrae, talk about, some activity going forward. Are we going to put that in the frame of a motion? Are we just going to leave the expectation? Obviously, there are some things that are carrying on regardless. Do we want to just think about it, and trustees can bring back something later in the year, or not at all? So what do we want to do from here? Trustee McCrae?
Through you, Chair, would it be possible that we had a review of these smaller schools? And what exactly are we in a position to, are we offering at this present time? And what are we in a position to, I think we just need to review these schools, first and foremost. And in terms of the quality and the quality of education that we're able to offer them, the extra activities, extracurricular activities, in comparison to some of our other schools, which maybe, I'm not saying our larger schools, but maybe ones that have more than 100 students. I'm not sure how we would approach this, but I think it's certainly something we might want to review.
Okay, one potential, I don't think we want to trigger a review, because that has all kinds of implications. And I think we'd want to be careful how we frame that, if that's what we're going to do. One of the options might be to have administration present to us sort of a recap of the strategy that we used going into the last one, the Quest 2020 process, and maybe make some possible suggestions on some things that we might consider adding in or changing. What do you think, Director?
I believe that we should be constantly reviewing for our students in our communities this very issue, and that when you let it all clog up, it creates an untenable situation. The trustees may not be aware, but in one of our trustees' areas, the community is asking us to come in and do the school closure and move the kids to another school right now. And they don't know what we're waiting for, and they don't understand that when you do this, you can have 2 or 3 people come in and hold a process hostage. And although maybe the 10 or 15 families that have kept a small school afloat, when 8 of the 10 say we would like to go to such and such a school because we think we want a science fair, we want a drama, we want this and so forth, 2 groups or 2 families can literally hold you up if you do not have the proper procedures and process in place. So if we're going to do this, we'll need a motion saying that directing the senior administration to do a review, as Trustee McCray has asked for, with some potential recommendations to go forward, and then you'd have to move through the ARC process at that point after you got the review from the senior administration.
Mr. Chair?
Yep, go ahead, Trustee McDonald.
A suggestion, I guess, is that perhaps we approach this as a two-pronged or multi-pronged approach. And first, a number of trustees have gone through this process. A number haven't. And perhaps we review the policy, we review the information that's required for us to even move into this exercise. And then the second prong, or the potentially other additional prong, is if there's an appetite at that point, then we go back to administration and say, what would be the next step then, as far as identifying those areas and moving forward. But it would at least give the opportunity to understand, allow the trustees to understand what the expectations are if we move in that direction. And then, at least we can have an ongoing discussion about it, but at some point we can make a decision whether we move forward without having a motion in place today to set that forward. Would that sound reasonable?
Yep, I'm just seeing if we can't get that framed in the form of a motion. Can we hold request in your administrator to complete review the potential? Go ahead, Trustee McAllister.
I fully agree with Trustee McDonald on this issue. I don't think that we need to investigate a motion at this point. What I would like to see done is to have the topic placed on the agenda with the appropriate background information, at which time we might then come to a motion with some knowledge and whatnot.
Okay. Trustee Karkner?
I agree with that move as well. I think we need to have some background, especially those of us who are new to the situation. I don't think we're ready to jump into a motion. I would hate to get this out into the communities that we're about ready to close schools once again, and I think we need to study this thoroughly as trustees before we come forward with anything.
Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in on this one? Anybody? I'm getting into the sense that there is a majority consensus around having an agenda topic on this sometime in the next couple months. Those that are against that notion probably should speak now.
I just have a question through you, Chair.
Yep.
The schools that were told they couldn't close, the small schools, as a result of 2020 without going through the ARC process again, are we effectively talking about perhaps changing this and having another ARC happen?
To close the school, you would have to go through an accommodation review process.
So schools that already went through the accommodation review process and stayed open cannot close again. At least my understanding was one of my schools can't close for another 2 years.
The period was 5 years, I think, from the date of
This would make it 2015, I think.
2000 and May 2008, I think, would be the calculation date.
Yeah.
So from May 2013 would be the earliest time that any of our schools, because I think that anybody could fairly say that all of them were involved in the accommodation review process, excluding that. I think the only ones that we could argue were not would be the high schools, but all of the elementary schools were reviewed, and I think that whether administration had put them on the list to close or not, I think that it would be fair to say that all of them were reviewed, and so that there's no school that could be closed until the 5 years has expired, and that would be May 2013.
So this proposal then is asking for us to consider going through the ARC process again. Am I incorrect on that?
This process, what I understand the trustees are asking for right now is just a review of the policy, the process, what we did last time, and before they want to investigate going down the path of looking at ARCs. I think it's fair to say we're some time away at this point from that discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, we'll put that on an agenda sometime, I would think, well, how soon can you do that? May?
Mr. Chair?
Yep, go ahead, Trustee McDonald.
I just want to clarify that, I mean, part of what I did talk about was ensuring that status quo is not an option, but status quo doesn't necessarily mean that we have to close every small school, and that's not what I was getting at. I think we need to review things and ensure that we're meeting the needs of kids. Aside from the discussion that we're going to have, the important discussion that we're going to have to determine whether we move forward in any avenue or not, is also looking at the boundaries. So, I mean, a size of a school and whether we're meeting the needs of kids is one thing, but I think it's important that we also identify within those discussions the process for us to review boundaries and making sure that we're meeting the needs of the communities.
Thank you, Trustee McDonald. Okay, are we all done on that? All right, thank you, Mr. Dawes. Thank you, Mrs. Patterson, for I guess completing the circle on that. Thank you very much. Okay, next item. We had an item on an agenda in January where we were discussing some potential discussion around the impact of Bill 115 and the bargaining process and extracurricular. And we pushed it off at the time, and we're bringing it back at this time really just because that's what we said we were going to do. I don't know that there's a lot, as chair, that I would say that a compelling reason to keep it on at this point. I mean, the relevant piece of legislation's gone. We have a new government. I'm not sure that it would be a useful strategy at this point.
Totally agree.
Does anybody disagree? Well, Trustee Carpenter, you want to speak to it?
I think it's time to drop this right now because Premier Wynne, I think, knows the negative impact it has had on the schools and on the teaching, but I'm a little concerned about what the bargaining process is going to be looking forward.
Well, that we still have a motion to keep our fingers on that and keep pushing that, so we will continue. David and I are through OPSPA with David, Trustee McDonald and Buckland, and just through our work are continuing to monitor that, and we'll bring something back more concrete to the board. One of the things that we're going to have to consider in that line is if they follow through with what I think most people are anticipating, which is a model that includes three parties at the table, the federations, the province, and some organization that represents boards, we're going to have a hard look at the capacity of our current organization to do that. And I think we will need to discuss maybe making some constitutional proposals to help that. Do you want to add anything to that, Trustee McDonald?
No, I think you're right. I mean, some of the conversation that we had on the weekend circled around that. It was about the.
Did they come back with a completed report from the session they ran at the symposium?
No, they didn't give us a report on the session that they had. No.
Because that was what they said they were going to do, if I remember correctly. That was going to, the fruits of that conversation were to come to the board of directors.
No, I don't have that. That wasn't there. I mean, a lot of the reports were verbal, but they didn't have anything for us on that from Pez.
Okay. So, but this particular topic, I think we can just let it go.
Yeah, I was just going to add, though. I think it should be noted that we have a number of extracurriculars going on, and we've got a number of our teachers that are providing the services that are considered voluntary to our students. Now, I can speak, both schools in particular are having École de Neige this week. So the ability to have students continue on with that extended learning within our schools, I think is instrumental. If we look at the social media, it's amazing the activities that are taking place in our schools. So regardless of a stage that is being done at a provincial level, our teachers are doing an amazing job.
Yep, I think that you're right, and I think our principals and our communities are also still rallying around to do that. In prep for a radio interview I did yesterday, I think I noted that there were 5 schools still in red on Students First Always. 40 were green, and the balance were obviously orange, of 105 reporting sites. So I think we're well on our way to getting some normalcy back to our schools. Okay, all right, then we'll withdraw that item, that recommendation from January 23rd. Review of policy 220, conflict of interest. You have an amended policy there. It's just to add some clarity. Any comments or questions? Okay, I look for a motion then to recommend the Upper Canada District School Board approve policy 220 as presented. Trustee McMillan, seconder.
I'll second it.
Trustee McDonald. You can go ahead and cast your ballot. I'm dead, so I'm in. Okay, I'm just going to call out names just to make sure that you're still there. Trustee Buckland? Trustee Garrow?
Yeah, I'm in favor.
Trustee Swan?
I'm in favor.
Trustee Karkner?
I'm in favor. I lost.
Okay, great. That passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll bring that forward to the next board meeting. Okay. Report from private session from February 13th. 1 personnel, 1 contractual, and 1 property matter was discussed in the private session, February 13th, 2013. No recommendations were brought forward. Move on now to report from Public Session Committee of the Whole. Are we still in? We need a motion, right? Okay. Should I have done that before we did the, okay, sorry about that. I missed that. Before the, okay. Can I have a motion to move out of committee of the whole? Trustee Karkner, Trustee McMillan.
Not getting it here.
Yeah, she's just typing. I'm just going to do a quick show of hands, okay? Is there anybody opposed? Trustee Karkner and Trustee McMillan. Is there anybody opposed? No.
No.
Then everybody is, except for Trustee Buckland, who is no longer with us. Is that correct, Trustee Buckland? Okay, great, thanks. All right, so can we take the report from private session as read? Thank you. Report from public session. There are a number of recommendations being brought forward. We have several policies. So, policy 424, occupational health and safety. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Trustee McMillan. Anybody online want to second this one?
Yeah, I'll second
Trustee Garrow. Go ahead and
Yeah.
vote. Trustee Swan,
Yes?
are you in favor?
Yes, I am, sorry.
Okay, thanks. Take
I'm
it.
back in. Our Buckland.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Buckland. Policy 421, violence in the workplace. Moved by Trustee McAllister, seconded by Trustee Karkner. Go ahead and vote. Trustee Swan?
In favor.
Okay, thanks. Trustee Buckland?
Favor.
Okay, thank you. The last of the motions we need to pass this evening as part of this report. It's a approved policy 226, safe workplace harassment, and we're retiring two policies, 222 and 225, respectful workplace and learning environments and workplace harassment. A mover and a seconder.
I'll go.
Trustee McDonald.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Trustee McCray. Go ahead and vote. Trustee Swan, you're in favor?
In favor.
Thank you. Trustee Buckland?
Favor.
Okay, thank you. So with your power outage, Trustee Swan, you don't have any internet?
That's correct.
Oh my goodness.
And I have half lights. It's a brownout, I guess, not a blackout.
Well, my kids wouldn't care about the lights, but they'd be 30 minutes without internet, and you'd think that the world had ended.
I'm going into withdrawal.
Okay.
Well done, dude.
All right, we now have debenture bylaw 14.25. This was introduced at a previous meeting. We do have Mr. Gales on the phone, I understand, if there are any comments or questions. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Trustee McAllister and Trustee McMillan that the Upper Canada District School Board approved debenture bylaw 14.25 to finance Good Places to Learn Stage 3, expenses $156,548. The construction of North Grenville District High School under Capital Priorities Funding, $16,101,475, and additional land and expropriation costs related to Van Cleek Collegiate Institute construction project under Ministries $120 million in capital funding. For us, that means $149,773 for a total of $16,407,796. Now, just for clarity, Superintendent Gales, this is all funded liability by the ministry, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions? Okay, go ahead and cast your ballot. Trustee Swan?
In favor.
Trustee Buckland?
In favor.
All right, thank you. That passes unanimously. Thanks, everyone. Labor update. As part of our regular updates, Trustee Charlotte, Superintendent Patterson. Would you like to make any comments?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just have 3 points that I'd like to highlight, and then I'm certainly open to answer questions or further any discussion. I guess first of all, I'd like to say that we continue to await the decision of the Ontario Labour Relations Board as it relates to our application regarding ETFO counselling and a legal strike with the withdrawal of voluntary activities. We hope to hear in the near future, but we don't have a date, so we continue to wait in that front. It's my understanding that there have been some discussions, certainly with our union leaders and the government, but in addition to that, there have also been discussions with the unions, government, and some school board representatives to, I think, primarily to look at negotiations come 2014 when these current contracts conclude, and also potentially to identify any opportunities that may assist the unions in their efforts to remedy some of the impact of the regulations that have been passed or put forward by the government. So I don't have any details in that regard, but I know that there are meetings going on, and so that's something that we should be mindful of and keep our ear to the ground as we can. I guess the most significant piece of information that came recently was OSSTF's has lifted the advice for its members, our secondary teachers, to withdraw from extracurricular activities. They now are in the position to choose to participate in voluntary activities, extracurricular activities, should they wish. I will note that Danny Thomas, who is our local OSSTF president, was quoted in the Recorder and Times as indicating that teachers have always had this choice as to whether they will participate in extracurricular activities, and that the advice to withdraw participation doesn't really change this. His expectation was some teachers would participate, some would not, and some would take their time and perhaps down the road, as is their choice. What I just would like to point out is that's not been the evidence that we've been presented with by principals and others. It's our understanding that there's been considerable pressure imposed by union stewards and others at local school sites. It's our understanding that teachers, the OSSTF members, have often sought direction, or if you will, permission from their steward to participate in extracurriculars, and it's also our understanding that invariably the answer to that question has been no. This is a concern for us, and we are concerned if our employees are experiencing undue pressure in the workplace that would cause them discomfort or concern, and of course with our policies and procedures as it relates to safe workplace. We have well, procedure in place to deal with, to deal with it if we need to do that. So I just bring that to your attention. I guess significantly, as you said, Chair, earlier, we see good signs with regard to extracurriculars in our board, but there's, I think, a ways to go.
Would you like your participants to be able to unmute their own lines by pressing *6? Press 1 for yes and 2 for. You will now rejoin the conference.
Oh, we tried. We tried. Sorry, Superintendent Patterson, had you finished?
Thank you.
Trustee McMillan?
Through you, Chair, I'm disappointed to hear that. It doesn't surprise me, but I'm disappointed. And you know, when you look at Student First, and we look at the schools and that are having extracurricular and things are coming back to normal, I believe that to be the case. But I also believe what you're saying to be very true, that there are situations in our board where teachers are being put in uncomfortable positions. I find it very difficult to understand how someone can say we lift the ban on something, or we now give permission to do something that they had permission to do anyways, or didn't need permission to do. I'm very confused on that. But I think in light of all of this, it certainly highlights the importance of the OLRB ruling. There are certainly some people in the public who have been critical, saying, well, you know, with new government and with people getting back to a little more respect for the unions in Toronto or in Queen's Park, that maybe it's redundant with what we've done. I totally disagree with that statement. I think that the ruling that's going to come out of the OLRB, and hopefully will be in our favor, certainly will set a precedent. It'll be something that will send a message loud and clear that teachers, when they are not in a strike position, are free to make decisions on their own accord and act in the best interest of their students that they're working with. And that should be their choice. So I really don't see the criticism that some people are directing towards us in terms of our commitment to what we went to the OLRB for as of no value now, because I think it is of extreme value. And I hope that the decision comes sooner than later. But regardless, it's a decision that will carry weight, not just in Ontario, but probably throughout North America, in terms of what job action really means and what individual members of a union, what their rights are. So, just my comment.
You have no. That's good. That's a good comment, and I think it's important for us to realize that at the heart of this ruling will be a decision around whether our vision or the union's vision of how extracurriculars or voluntary activities can be used to promote their frustration is important. And you know what? That didn't make any sense. So I'll try again. That was not good. That's what happens when you try to be political. All right. This is really the key. The union believes, the federations have believed that because of the nature of these activities, that they can, even in a non-strike position, can instruct, advise teachers, and if you read it to the letter of the way it was sent, direct teachers to not participate. Our contention is that by withdrawing these events, regardless of whether they're voluntary or not, disrupts the operation of a school board. And because of that, it violates the Education Act, or it meets the Education Act's definition of what a strike is. So regardless of whether all the teachers return back to extracurricular or the unions back off on whether it's advice to their teachers or directives, it does not change the fact that once and for all we need to know whether it is appropriate for federations to, in a non-strike position, to counsel their members to disrupt the activity of a school board. And so I think that in talking to your constituents, if you're asked, because that is the question that's coming forward in the media and from others, that, well, you know, is there much point in having in the ruling? There definitely is. We need to know. Too often, extracurriculars have been withdrawn or affected because of labor strife, and we need to find out one way or the other whether that's appropriate. Now that was better, right?
Clear.
Wow. I don't know where I went there. Any other comments or questions? Trustee McAllister?
I think it's important that we focus on the positive atmosphere that has resulted from the election of a new premier, the appointment of a new minister, and I sincerely hope that we can move forward.
Well, and I think that you know, that speaks to the fact that largely, you know, we've always understood that this always was a battle that, or battle perhaps isn't the right word, but a conflict that had its origins in Toronto, in Queen's Park and amongst others there, and I think that our teachers have, I think, responded well, and I think that our Students First Always site has tracked that admirably.
Through you, Chair, and I agree with you, Trustee McAllister, in emphasizing the positive side of things. It frightens me to think that stability is based on who is in office in Toronto, and that if by some chance the present government is asked to leave office and the other party comes in, that's going to throw all of us into a state of being discontent again, and then the kids once again will be held hostage. And I really think it should not matter to any of us who is holding down the political positions in Toronto. Our students should always come first, regardless of who is sitting in those positions, and whether you're happy with who is there, and I don't mean you personally, but I mean all of us in education, whether we're happy with who the Minister of Education is or who the Premier is, should not come into play when it comes to giving the best quality education we can give to our students on a day-to-day basis.
Any other comments? Trustee Director Thomas?
Non-political comment. I would like to thank our school system for being filled with courageous people who have listened to their consciences. You clearly pointed out, Chair Petersman, we're in a 90 to 95% rate of schools being back to normal, and we had the courage to take ETFO to the LRB with Trillium Lakeland. As you know, Trillium Lakeland has nothing going on whatsoever, and so do most boards across Ontario. And I think this says something about this board of trustees, your senior team, your teachers, your principals, who put kids first, who have had the courage to tell people that, you know, we disagree with what the government has done. I mean, none of us like what happened with 115, but at the moment it became the thing we had to live with. We then became focused on our students, and as Vice Chair McMillan has said, we have to, and he said this a number of times, we have to get off this rat race where we're spinning around in a circle, and every time there's a conflict, what we do in education is we take it out on our students. I think we have to find a better way to communicate, a better way to work, and this board for nearly 10 years has always put kids first. And I think that's the hallmark, and I think our teachers understand that. I think our custodians understand it. Our principals, our office administrators, our EAs at this board will continue to put kids first. And as the chair pointed out most recently at OBSPA, to the groups that perhaps were afraid to take the big union to the LRB. The LRB, the union has been taken to the LRB twice now. First time to say that it was not right to be out on or thinking it was a legal strike, and then the second one, the day of action, was a political action, and the LRB said it was a strike. And I think what we understand now is that boards that put kids first will be rewarded somehow, that parents will understand that they're number one as we go through. So good work, and I'd like to just talk about the courageous teachers who have stood up to people in their staff rooms and said, don't you dare do that, and said, no, I'm doing the right thing here for kids, and those people must be commended. And I think hopefully the community will recognize that often it's a very courageous decision as we go through.
Okay, there, Trustee McDonald? Do you want in on this conversation? You have to star 6 if you're muted. Okay, so you need to unmute.
All participants have been unmuted.
Okay.
You will now rejoin the conference.
All right, sorry about that. So go ahead. Sorry, David, if you were on a long-winded speech, we didn't hear any of it. So,
No. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
I felt like
We're trying to find that same code for the director.
Yeah, and my children.
Thank you, David.
I wanted to point out that a couple of things. I don't want to get into too much of the OPSBA report, but during the session on the weekend, the minister did attend on Friday night and address the trustees that were present for the board of directors meeting, and she addressed a number of issues about moving forward and certainly setting a tone for labor relations moving forward, negotiations moving forward. It was indicated, obviously, that day OSSTF did make an announcement indicating that directing their members that is now okay to provide voluntary services if they wish or be involved in extracurricular. Everybody applauded that and thought it was great that was happening, and certainly it was that they made that statement. But what it was alarming, though, is that they made the statement saying it's now okay, but what that means to me is they did, at one time did say it wasn't okay to do that. So I think we missed the mark on trying to give OSSTF a free ticket there, and I think the province is just, because they've made the statement of allowing them to move forward and applauding the fact that they're allowing their teachers to participate. The next thing I wanted to say is that the minister made a comment that she is, or during the discussions with OSSTF, which perhaps framed the announcement by OSSTF, is that they did provide no new money to OSSTF. They did make no commitments to change or alter the contract as it existed. Although we know that there are some pieces in place that we need to address, and there are some discussions about what might happen with the contract moving forward. But the minister basically wanted us to understand that there's no money promised, there was no commitments made, other than that she would enter into a discussion as to what bargaining or collective bargaining process would look like in the future. And she indicated to us at this time, and Chair, you had made mention of it, that there was that three-party, tri-party process that would be involved. The ministry or the government, because they are the funder, boards because they are the employers, and the unions because they represent the employees. So having said that, most of the discussion was quite light, just about what has to happen moving forward. I guess the caution that I have is if we make an assumption that the minister is a former trustee and represented OPSPA, and the premier is a former Minister of Education, a former trustee, that they will be friendly to boards of education. I think it's a false sense of security. They have a job to do. They are political animals, and we know that the union is far superior at being a political animal than boards of education. Unions provide money to political parties. Boards of education do not. So I think as we move forward, I use this word cautiously optimistic, that things will get better. But I also believe that these two individuals, the new minister and the new premier, have a job to do. Their job is to govern. Their second job is to get reelected. So I think we need to be aware that there are some things that will happen that may not be in the favor of boards as we move forward.
All right, thank you, Trustee McDonald. Any other comments? Okay. I think obviously we have a couple of, we have an iron in the fire, and we still have a significant issue with the future of bargaining. But I think that, this is one of the first labor updates that perhaps we can leave with a sense of positiveness and moving forward. And I think that we're starting to see the back of this, and that can't come soon enough for our communities. So I think well done, everybody who's been involved. We've had to navigate some uncharted waters, and I think that we've done it all right, and tremendous amount of admiration to our principals, vice principals who held the schools together, and for those teachers who have been have worked away and are finding ways to support students. I think that's it. Move on now. Thank you.
Chair, sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
Sorry, I was trying to get the mute off. I just wanted to know, will this come through in the budget process as in regards to the amount of money the oral LB hearing cost us?
Well, I can tell you that our half of the legal bill was $95,000.
And is this coming out of our legal fees that we've budgeted for then?
Well, it comes out of the administration portion of our budget, correct?
Yes.
And that's our half. So both boards received a bill for $95,000.
And that includes legal, hotel, everything.
No, the hotels I would probably figure cost us $10,000 all total.
Which comes out of which budget line?
Well, it depends. Like, for instance, any costs of mine are come out of the trustee budget line, and
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I'm not sure that that's a labor relations update.
That's fine.
Sorry, I tried to cut in earlier. It's just I had to switch cells again because I ran out of minutes on the one I was using.
Regardless, I don't think the question of our costs associated with activity is a labor relations update.
I'm just wondering how much it costs the union.
Well, before we devolve, I was going to make the announcement of the 95 because it's been asked, and I don't see any reason to hide that. And really, it's not a very high number. Anybody that has any experience with legal bills knows that they must have done a fair amount of work. I think that must be a pretty heavily discounted bill. So anyway, those are the numbers. And
I think the other piece, the chair and the trustees were aware that we've had commitments from other boards of education to support us in this campaign, Waterloo being the most recent.
Okay. I'm going to move on now to report from the Special Education Advisory Committee. Trustee McAllister.
Thank you very much. I'll ask Trustee Richards to chip in if I don't cover anything correctly or whatnot. Two things. One, Kathy Blair was elected as chair of SEAC for this coming year. And there was a presentation made by Kathy, Kimberly Wright, and Donna Richards. They presented an overview of the lack of provincial funding to assist young adults in transition from high school. And the facts are rather astonishing, but there's a $10,000 cap on assistance for the at-home assistance like that, but the average was $4,200 annually, and it's an assessment based on a sliding scale based on the disability. There are 7,000 individuals on the wait list receiving no funding. There has been no increased funding to pay for support workers since 2007, and families have been told to use the Ontario Disability Supplement Program in place of missing funds The problem there is that the Ontario Disability Supplement Program only covers children up to 18, and the issue concerns that transition from 18 to adulthood or to post-secondary education, etc. And it really represents unfair treatment. So I guess to make a long story short here, what the SEAC committee decided to do was they passed a motion that SEAC ad hoc committee be struck to examine the issues around the current provincial funding structure and the potential impact it has on student learning and student success. And it's quite possible that after that discussion, that a motion will be referred from the committee to the board. I don't know if Trustee Richards, have I covered that adequately?
Yes, you have. There is an issue. It's the special services at home money that is being cut off at the age of 18. And at 18, that money now is being allocated by the developmental services. But there's a very long waiting list at the developmental services, and that's where sometimes up to 2 to 3 years before people with disabilities are getting their funding from that pocket. So it is the transition from kids from 18 to whenever they do receive that money from developmental services, and those are the ones that are not receiving services.
Thank you. Is Superintendent Edwards on the line?
No, I don't know.
All right, she touched on the following items: changes to the student engagement staff. She discussed a community living conference that she had been to. She talked about the Teaching for Learning working meeting with school teams, banking expectations for students, the full day early learning kindergarten program, as well as the Crew Day and C21 Canada, which is Canadians for 21st Century Learning and Innovation. This was an award which was given to one of our speech language pathologists, Alex Dunn. So we're proud of that. I think that concludes my report, Chair.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions? Okay, thank you. Trustee McAllister. Trustee McDonald?
I don't have any questions, but are you ready for the next item?
Yep, that's what I'm moving to, sorry.
Okay. So part of my report was going to include the Friday night activity, which had the minister make a presentation or make a visit to us. In light of the fact that she was a former president of OPSPA, I think is part of the reason why she did come. She thought she'd have a friendly audience, and she did, by all means. The next part of the Friday evening was a presentation by a joint ministry presentation on a project called Stepping Stones. It's a resource on youth development. It's a combination of work done by the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Child and Youth Services. I have a full document that outlines the work that is being done to assist schools and communities on this. It's around the different levels of child development, but focuses on particular areas around early adolescence, and moves forward from that point, and then into early adulthood. But it centers around areas around cognitive, emotional, physical, and social development, and there are some definite advantages to having some of this information, and perhaps most of our staff are aware of this. But I'll make the information available to the trustees in the trustee office, and then as well to our staff. On Saturday, we had a presentation or a report from Michael Hines, who is the lawyer representing our board in Trillium Lakelands at the Ontario Labour Relations Board. OPSPA had invited Mr. Hines to make a presentation to the OPSPA member boards as to what had taken place thus far at OLRB. Mr. Hines did a great job in presenting. He took about a half an hour, 40 minutes to present the framework and the context of what the case was. Provided information, background information as to a definition of strike and an activity within a school, strike-like activity in a school, and also provided the paperwork that ETFO was using to direct their staff or their members rather to not participate. As I said, his presentation was very fair, very balanced. He indicated that he was working on behalf of the two boards and was sharing information that was simply public information as a result of stuff that was discussed and presented at the hearing itself. The president then opened the floor up to questions and framed it in such a way that there was it was to be a question clarification, a little bit more fact digging exercise as opposed to a mud slinging exercise. And mudslinging is the word, the terminology that he used. So the floor was opened up, and immediately the representative from the Ottawa Carleton District School Board had mud and decided to swing some mud. Her comments, her concerns framed around some of the things that we've heard from some of the discussion today tonight at the table, and we've heard it before about A, the cost, B, the relationship with the union, C, the ongoing negative impact across the province, and it continued on. More questions came from the floor, certainly some clarification as to what impact a decision would have, the length of time for a decision, those types of things. Waterloo Region Board spoke up and certainly spoke in favor of what we were doing, and Trillium Lakelands, and also said that he had hoped or anticipated that OPSPA would lead the charge to support an assistance fund to help the two boards. Wasn't met very positively by many boards, but none the same, it was an A for effort on that particular point. Then a member from Hamilton basically echoed what Ottawa Carleton discussed, and framed it around the context of relationships with their unions, that type of thing. I had an opportunity to speak and clarify a few things. And my clarification around the OLRB was simply just to reaffirm what Michael Hines had said. It's a communication piece. It was one of these cases that is before us to ensure that we are allowing teachers to have the voice of what is voluntary and what is not. They can choose to participate or not participate as an individual. Talked briefly about the impact of what one board does to other boards in the province, and framed it around boards of education deciding to not pass balanced budgets or to sign contracts prior to other boards being on side. Everything having an impact on other boards. And then certainly talked about the relationship piece, and although I didn't agree completely with what Ottawa Carleton and Hamilton were saying about the relationship piece with unions, I think it's important to have that relationship with unions, but I clarified that we're concerned about the relationship with our students in our communities first and foremost. Without students, we certainly have less need for teachers. So framed it around that context. The meeting, or that portion of the meeting, ended, and we moved into some more labor relations updates. Most of those updates were shared this evening already. There was some discussion around the financial aspect. There is the 34 credit issue has been resolved based on some information that has been brought forward. Amalgamation is now off the table, and they still have to address the underutilized schools. The province and the ministry has has not addressed that yet. So that's still a lingering issue that they need to address. They talked about the submission for capital needs and priorities around schools. Of the 72 boards that actually provided business cases for capital needs, Upper Canada, as you're aware, has received funding for 2 new schools. So of the 72 boards, there was $3.5 billion worth of expenditures that were submitted to the province. The province chose to hand out $711 million. You see how difficult it is to try and get some of that money, and how difficult it is for the province to make a decision based on those documents that are being supported. So I think we've done a fairly good job in our board to get 2 elementary schools, to have some secondary schools built in our area. When you look at the large amount of money that is required across this province to meet the needs of the capital requirements, it's quite substantial. The GSN update, there is ongoing discussion around GSNs, and there was some information, preliminary information, with superintendents of business officials around their concerns, their information required around what might need to be adjusted or looked at when we make our submission to the government on the GSN handouts. We also spoke about the FDK piece. It really has no impact for us based on the decision that we've made, but certainly are moving forward with what we've done. They did talk about some of the boards that do offer the extended day programs, and some of the boards that are still continuing to offer those programs themselves. At some point, though, there's going to be a requirement, whether it's boards offering the services or whether it's a third party offering those services. We are required to post those rates publicly for the extended day programs. One of the last things I wanted to mention is the accessibility, the AODA legislation. Moving forward, there's still some work to be done on the training of individuals associated to meeting the needs of persons with disabilities. But the point that I wanted to bring up was around the built environment. The built environment, I was a little confused at what's happening, but it appears that the province has taken a slight step back. What I thought or believed to be a hard line date in the sand for having built environments meet the building code requirements for handicap accessibility by 2025 is really a soft date. It's a suggested date. The building code is being reviewed and should be ready by 2014 for implementation, which will set out the new requirements and new details as to how buildings are to meet the requirements for handicap accessibility. The one piece around that is that in order for a building code to be enforced, a building permit application has to be put in place. So if we choose at this point to do nothing with a particular school, we're not forced to do anything with any entrances or those types of things or any washrooms. As soon as we begin to do any renovation work, then the door opens. The comment back from Susan Cook at OPSPO is that, that's a suggestion. It would be a nice to have based on the legislation, but there's also human rights available. If boards don't offer those services to meet the needs of persons with disabilities, then we could face human rights issues. I think we need to understand how that fits into how we're going to move forward, because if we build it into a capital plan moving forward, then there's some implications associated to that. So we moved into regional discussions and reports back from regional discussions. Peter also gave a report from the First Nations on a response to a document, and I'll let Peter speak up, or Trustee Buckland as well if I've missed anything. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Trustee McDonald. Trustee Garrow, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, it's pretty well Trustee McDonald has captured everything. It's just that but I must state that after we heard from Ottawa Carlton and Trustee McDonald really, I thought, explained our situation very well. And as a matter of fact, that even from the new minister, Sandals, coming to meet with us on Friday, she came off immediately talking about that there's going to be no change in the collective bargaining, that there's no new money, but they have a need to formalize a new collective bargaining process, I guess. But even with that, but she also spoke about the speech from the throne. And when she was talking about the throne, she talked where a number of things that there was a need, I guess, by the Premier about the revised collective bargaining, improving student achievement, closing the gap for Aboriginal students and that. But she also talked about youth programs and employment of youth, which I thought was really interesting. But I think that what the Minister Sandals forgot about, and which Dave brought up, Trustee McDonald stated, that the focus has to be the student. And I was really pleased to see the director from the Waterloo Board, also speak to that effect too, that was supporting Trillium and Upper Canada. So, but no, I also collected a couple of the stepping stone. I have a couple of stepping stone documents, and I will provide to Lisa a copy of my report from our Native Trustee Council, and for everyone to read in that. So, but I'll leave it at that. But Trustee McDonald, you did a great job. Thank you.
All right, Trustee McAllister, you had a question or comment?
Just a question to Trustee McDonald. Without giving away any deep state secrets, was there any discussion with regard to a cohesive OPSPA approach to a negotiating strategy as a tripartite member on an ongoing basis for 2014?
Yeah, not officially. Certainly there was discussion about what it's going to look like, and who the players are. The discussion and the information that came from administration of OPSPA was that they want to be part of the conversation. In a private conversation I had, and I say private in the sense that it wasn't an open session in public, a conversation that I had with the president is that in light of what had taken place when I've been attending these board of director meetings for some time, and we always have the situation where we have some boards disagreeing and becoming very vocal with other boards and that type of thing, or disagreeing with even the action of OPSPA. My comment to the president was that as a unit, as an OPSPA unit, we need to get our act together before anything else, because we don't know what it's going to look like in the future. And my worry is that whether we want it to happen or not, if OPSPA becomes part of the process and we are in a dysfunctional light, then we're doomed. As boards of education, we're doomed. So, OPSPA needs to pick up the pace and get their stuff together. But I think we need to, as boards of education, need to strategize and determine whether OPSPA is the right voice for us as well. I mean, I am our Upper Canada representative on OPSPA, but I don't know what the alternative is, and I think it's important for us as Upper Canada Board to decide whether OPSPA is that right voice for us.
Thank you.
If I could just add in, Trustee McDonald, I think one of the things that we might have to do is start challenging our colleagues, our fellow boards, to start taking OPSPA seriously. Many times we've discussed the fact that we expect OPSPA to perform functions that they're just not funded to do. They don't have the human resources to do, the expertise to do. And I think that rather than placing a lot of the focus on the leadership at OPSPA, we need to start putting it on our colleagues, because those will be the people that get in the way of any significant change. Trustee McMillan?
Through you, Chair, you know, as important as relationships are, and I certainly believe they are important, I don't want to ever have people think I don't believe those relationships are important. This board is known, in my opinion, for two things. Number one, they always put kids first in every decision that is made. But something that I think that has come to light over the last little while is this board also has the courage to put those kids forward. And what I want to do is thank you, David, for having the courage to stand up in an environment that I'm sure was not overly welcoming to you, and to stand up for us, and to stand up for the kids that you represent and that we all represent, because it takes courage to do that. And I thank you so much for doing that for us.
Thank you, Vice Chair McMillan, but it becomes very easy when we have a board, as you said, that acts in the way it does. It's really easy to speak openly and easily about what we're doing.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you, Trustee McMillan. Student Trustee Collard is not with us this evening, and she will be sending out some notes tomorrow to trustees, and we'll append them to the agenda when we get them. Just some comments. Director, do you have any comments?
Just one of the trustees are probably fully aware of this. John alluded to it in his report. We had quite a week of picking up national awards. We had in special education, one of our speech and language people pick up a national award. Very, very proud of her and her work. This is the first time we've been recognized for that type of work. And of course, yesterday in downtown Toronto, one of 13 principals from Ontario, one of 51 across Canada, Carol Dufour, was recognized as an outstanding principal in Canada. And Carol, as you know, is a humble individual, but if you watch her career, everywhere she's been, she's left a trail of perfection, a trail of excellence, a trail of putting kids first. And for us, it was wonderful to see her chosen by that group, and I know for her to be there with the Minister of Education and the group we surrounded her with, it was a very special night. And I think, David, thank you for representing the senior team there, but very special. I imagine it was first class. And Carol gave me an email thanking all of us for the support. And we said, no, Carol, thank you for being the person you are. And it was a very special week that way for us.
Okay, and I just want two comments, and they're really more sort of inside baseball. Tonight was, I think, a significant milestone in the way that we handled the electronic meeting. This is the most we've ever had taking part. Must have been at any time 12, 13 people online, and I think that I hope that everybody felt online that they were able to participate in the meeting. We are looking at using some of the other pieces of technology software that we have to provide an electronic hands-up function, so that rather than having to go through each individual, there'd be an electronic way for them to signal to the chair that they wish to get in on the conversation. So we will continue to work away at that, and certainly after the meeting, if there's any feedback from those who spent the time online, I'd certainly appreciate it. I know some of you had to deal with power outages and landlines going dead, but I appreciate the fact that you made the effort, and we were able to conduct a full meeting with everybody's comments despite the weather. The other piece is that we have been making changes to the format of the meeting over time. We've sort of been moving through various things. One of the first issues we wanted to deal with was walk-ons or late additions to agendas, and we've dealt with that. We wanted to make sure that we reduce the number of private sessions to the absolute minimum and we've accomplished that. The next part is providing more complete reporting, or reporting that meets a different standard than our expectations before. I think that we had some good examples of those tonight with communication and especially Mr. Dawes' report. Really what we want is for trustees to become with the knowledge, but also in 10 years when you go back to look at an agenda and you look at a topic, that you understand what the topic was about and the thoughts at the time. I do understand that for some, especially those reports that are compiled by trustees, that sometimes they just don't have the time to do written reports. And on reflection, I think that we should, obviously a written report's better, but a lot of, especially around your report, Trustee McDonald, a lot of it's so timely that I don't know that it's absolutely necessary to have it documented for forever. So I guess I'm giving you an excuse.
Gee, thanks.
The same, the report, Trustee McAllister, when he gives this report, is just a summary of the report that's already in the agenda, and so I think that that's appropriate too. Anyway, that's all my comments. Thanks to all those that did come in, and safe drive home, and all of you that can just hang up the phone and go to bed. We are envious. Thanks, everyone. And I need a motion to adjourn. Trustee McMillan, seconded by Trustee McAllister.